The smallest thing that makes me see red. These are the petty things I'd criminalize. Designing an ad so that the X to make it go away is really just a facade to make you click on the ad. Yelling and or being aggressive at minimum wage workers as a means to bend or break rules to get what they want. Basically, get rid of the customer is always right mentality in business. Mail addressed to neighbor or current resident. If you don't know who lives there, you shouldn't be able to spam me. It would save a lot of paper and gas, too. Growing a big old bush on your corner lot house that blocks the view of the intersection.
That is not where I thought you were going when you started out, but I agree nonetheless.
All canned goods of the same size can no longer have irregular shapes and must fit snugly into one another. I face and zone shelves as part of my job, and the cans that don't stack tee me right the frick off. I would like a law stating that all companies must make their cans in such a way that they will stack. Making the volume go way up for commercials. Man, that really grinds my gears. Leaving public bathrooms a mess. You people know who you are. I'm currently a janitor for a public washroom, and people are absolutely frickin' animals. Animals. You know how people say, everyone should have to work retail for 1 year? No, everyone should have to clean a public washroom for 1 week. 1 week is enough for people to get the picture, trust me. I don't understand how crap gets smeared on the back of the door kind of often, and how used tampons end up on the ground when there's literally a little bin right by the toilet paper. Or how, when a toilet gets plugged, people continue to go into it. You know what I found on Canada Day? A plugged toilet with 6 different diarrheas in there. Seriously. I've realized that people don't associate seeing janitors with the nice and clean washrooms they're using. They only associate them with the moment they close the washroom to clean it. I've literally had people yell at me because I had to close a public washroom to clean it. To clean it! And while I'm in there, I put the sign up that says, temporarily closed for cleaning, and people will knock on the door constantly, as if to say, hey, hurry up cleaning up the crap off that wall, I have to pee on the counter and smash a glass bottle in the toilet. Issues like this make me actually want more of a nanny state system where you have to sign into your public restroom with some sort of national ID so that you can be directly tracked and prosecuted when you do this. Obviously, that shouldn't be something you'd have to think to implement, but apparently we can't be trusted with convenient amenities for the public good. Clickbait videos with the little red circle pointing out nothing. You won't believe what happens next. Click here. Nothing. Nothing else ever happens. Websites asking me to subscribe to their newsletter immediately after I visit them for the first time, without even having had the chance to look at their content. You've spent 1.8 seconds on our site. Would you mind taking a survey? Junk mail and flyers filling the mailbox. And believe it or not, I still get a 3-inch thick phone book every few months. Who's paying to get these made? Don't they realize the world just Googles if they need a number now? Waste of money, trees, and space. Installing blindingly bright floodlights on your truck and turning them on while driving at night. I don't see why people would be willing to endanger everyone on the road around them just to look like a D-bag. People that stop their cars to have a conversation with someone on the street or in another car, especially when there's no way around them.
You know what I'd make illegal? Littering. Oh, wait. Not like anyone seems to realize that's illegal.
Oh no, people realize, they just fail to care. Can confirm. I was once at a bus stop with a garbage can a few yards away. Someone else came by to wait for the bus. They stood between me and the garbage. He then pulled out some candy from his pocket, unwrapped it and threw the wrappers onto the road. The garbage can was about 1 step and an arm's length away. It also had a bright red, "Only you can prevent litter" sticker on it. Spitting chewing gum out and just sticking it anywhere. It's filthy when you accidentally touch someone's gum stuck under a table. Whoever started the various swallowing gum urban legends is responsible for this, by the way. I've been swallowing my gum for probably 10 of my 19 years on this earth, and I've never had any problem with it.
This is one of my most embarrassing stories. I was working for a car dealership when I was fresh out of high school. The job got busy, and I figured instead of finding a garbage can, I'd just swallow my gum to save some time. I swallowed my gum, and about 4 hours into the shift, I had to use the washroom. So, turns out gum doesn't digest. That's obvious, right? That would be fine, too, under most circumstances. but my rear orifice has a head of hair fuller than Kanye West's inflated ego. Have you ever had gum stuck in your hair? I mean, that sucks, right? Well, my hair merged with this gum as I tried to wipe. Middle of my shift, and I'm sitting there for 20 minutes getting paid to pluck gum out of my butt hair while I silently cry from the pain of forcing an involuntary Brazilian on my booty hole. In short, when it comes to swallowing gum, if you've got hair down there, don't you dare.
Not putting your house number anywhere on your house. I deliver pizza. The paramedic community endorses this law as well.
Hi, this is emergency services returning your call. Could you fan the flames a little? We're having trouble finding your place.
A clique of people walking in a horizontal line that practically devours the entire sidewalk and then are still somehow entirely oblivious to the fact that they're doing so or just explicitly don't care. Instead of moving out of the way, I come to a complete stop on my side of the sidewalk. They'll either walk right into you and apologize since it was obviously their fault, or abort at the very last second, which looks hilarious. Works well. I'd recommend. Having videos that autoplay with audio on a website.
Those websites freak me the F out because I never know where the sound's coming from.
Companies putting crappy stickers all over the product that sticks to the item when you try to peel it off. Come on, I know I'm not the only one. Thank you to everyone who sent me their home remedies for this issue. I've unsuccessfully used some of these methods to get them off, but I'll have to try heat. Only problem with things like WD-40 and alcohol is that most of my issues come from DVD and Blu-ray cases, and the liquid will sometimes damage the cardboard. They're also making some of these stickers so bad that it rips the design off the case. I would make any sort of malware and pop-up ads illegal. Playing any kind of car noise like honking during radio commercials. I can't tell you how many times it's thrown me off while driving. I'm surprised there haven't been more car accidents caused by this kind of stuff. The worst are when there are siren sounds on the radio. I've legitimately considered filing an FCC complaint about sirens in radio ads. I always slow down and start looking around for ambulances or fire trucks before realizing it's just a frickin' Jimmy John's commercial. Playing music out loud on public transport. Headphones, people! Such a good invention. My gosh, the bums that do that here in Portland. They'll hop on the train with their radio and it barely picks up an FM station, so it's just a bunch of static with a few words sprinkled in here and there. So not only are you stuck listening to the radio in morning rush hour, but it's on a static station and you can't change the channel. I believe there's a deep circle of hell where this happens to very bad people. Also, kids watching obnoxious videos on their parents' phones. I'm not a morning person. I don't have kids. I don't want to hear your kids' stupid videos or music. Headphones, people. If you can afford the newest iPhone, please do us daily commuters a favor and buy headphones. Jesus Christ. I have like a million, but putting your stupid flyers on my car windshield, who said you could put that there? Rule 1, don't touch the car. Don't touch any car but your own. Answering your phone and not excusing yourself from the room to have that conversation. Hold on, I need to loudly talk to this person over the phone and completely ignore or disrupt the people who are still in the room. I still have a friend that loves to do this. I think she likes the attention of being disruptive, or is just so proud that she has a cell phone, which, everyone has. Yep. Proud owner of a 2004 Nokia 5146 here. I still get a little buzz of self-esteem every time I whip that bad boy out for all to see. This is what life in the future is like, peasants. Don't know why you're all tapping on pieces of glass. Whatever that fad is will probably die out any day now. Leaving shopping carts in parking spaces. The place to return it is right there. I'd also add people that leave garbage in the carts and people who leave carts down the street. As a cart pusher for Costco, this drives me absolutely nuts because it's a legitimate safety concern for cars trying to pull in, and if the cart is on an incline, it'll probably end up rolling into some poor jerk's car, and he'll blame me. Mosquitoes. Screw those guys. Straight to jail. I know this is more American-based, but riders on legislation. The budget should outline the budget and not tack on trash bits of law to get things in. Needs to be one bill, one issue. Pop-up and on-click ads, especially the on-click ads. That crap just gets way annoying. I get it. It's the price I have to pay for not being able to afford to watch the series legally, but putting 7 on-click ads on the play button is just cruel. The worst is when you intend to click something but miss by a few pixels and wind up clicking into ad hell. Last time I did that, I got into an ad trap that was the worst thing ever. Text-to-speech audio, epilepsy graphics, a dialogue that prevented closing the window, and then did a refresh to prevent Chrome from detecting it was continuing to pop up window-closed dialogues. It flickered between windowed and full-screen modes, kept popping up a dialogue to install an extension. If they could have made my computer pee oil on the floor, they would have done it and set it on fire. I had to kill all of the Chrome processes from the task manager to find the right one to silence that bullcrap. I really want to murder whoever's responsible for those kinds of ads, and I'm pretty sure no jury in the world would ever convict me. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? Adding people to Facebook groups without their permission. I don't care about your jamboree raps, Jen. Why are 50% of the women I went to high school with now selling crappy jewelry or health drinks? I had a former coworker who added me to no less than 10 groups, all different ones about her selling her crappy handmade jewelry or yard sale items. Just stop. Letting your small children make noise and screw about unattended inside the movie theater during a movie they can't appreciate, understand, or shouldn't watch. Don't take your 7-year-old kids to see Logan if they can't be quiet or sit still for F's sake. I went to see Lego Batman and I was fully prepared to be irritated by noisy kids, because it comes with the territory. What I didn't expect to find was a little boy crying and shouting behind me for a good 30 minutes because he couldn't find his dad, who had decided to sit at the opposite end of the theater to his own son, and then presumably listened to his own child's increasing distress and the restless concern of strangers for ages before actually coming to get him. Crappy parenting at its finest. It was still an awesome movie, though. Okay, because people have been asking, ushers aren't a thing in the UK, so getting a member of staff would have taken a long time. Also, I was buried several rows back from this boy and would have had to literally climb over a dozen people who were in a better position to help him than I was. Finally, as one of the few people in the theater who didn't come with a child, I would have felt extremely uncomfortable trying to interact with him in any way, in case someone thought I was the reason he was screaming and asking for his dad. Came for Batman, wasn't planning on getting arrested. Smelling like an unwashed buffalo's butthole. Look, I know for some people it's not easy buying all the crap you need to have good hygiene, but some people I'm around, I mean, my God, can't you smell yourself before you walk out the door? It's one thing to smell like crap in the middle of the day at work, but it's unacceptable to arrive at work already smelling like that. Fake advertisements on the internet. You can't run fake ads on TV. Why is it no problem to make fake ads on the internet? Okay, to everyone chipping in here saying, what are fake ads? Or they do still in fact allow fake ads on TV. In my country, false advertising is forbidden on TV. And these fake ads you mention still promote real products. The ads I find fake are the ones selling ways to become a millionaire or lose weight quickly. The clickbait kind of ads. Littering on the beach. People who bring coolers and packages with zero intentions of taking their crap after they leave. Pseudoscience. Recently, it's not only keyboard warriors who claim to be an expert in everything. There's a trend where YouTube is filled with investigations and research which is not conducted in a proper way. So they base themselves on iffy sources and claim this to be the scientific truth. By the way it's presented, it seems legitimate enough, and if you're not an expert yourself, the mistakes aren't that easy to spot. For a long time, I was convinced the scientific community would anchor the uncolored reality, whatever popular belief and crappy journalism would be. But seeing the sheer mass of misinformation, express or accidental, I'm getting scared for the results on the long-term memory of mankind. Mainly because not every single detail is worth fully investigating, and a number of small unfunded assumptions have a much greater impact than you would expect. People using speakerphone and complaining about being victimized when people comment on it. Stop listening to my private conversation. Well, that would be easier if your private conversation wasn't louder than my max volume music through my sound-canceling headphones, you stupid fricking cow. I think if I called someone and then I learned that they were speaking to me in a crowded public setting with me on speakerphone, I would be mortified. Or maybe if I was more savvy, I'd intermittently say something like, if you're enjoying the sound of these dulcet tones, feel free to check out Am I the Genius, a channel where you can hear me regurgitate literally every opinion on the internet verbatim. You've got to keep that hustle going, right? People who, when shopping, block the aisles for selfish reasons. I know aisles are easy to block by accident, I just really hate it when elderly people are having conversations right in the middle and have seemingly blocked out everyone else's existence. And I kind of wish I could blast an air horn at them. I've just taken to knocking their cart out the way with mine while saying a curt, "Excuse me." Man, I love getting old. Bringing babies to movie theaters. I saw a post once that mentioned some movie theaters do parent-baby screenings of movies, or something where people can bring kids or infants to movies and it's cool because that's what the screening is for. I really wish that was a regular thing. Walking through my garden. There have been 3 neighbors walk right through while I was sunbathing today. F off, everyone. I'm not allowed to put up a fence on my UK council property, otherwise I would have done so. You should just start sunbathing in the buck. It will either solve your problems or backfire and make a whole bunch of new ones. Grandma sharing everything she sees on Facebook. My mother has an obsession with online quizzes. Whenever I see one, I click the little options button in the post and tell it I don't want to see posts from that source anymore now. Now I only see them when they come from new sites, which are quickly blocked again. Leaving religious pamphlets or Bible verses or fake money with quotes or messages on them for a server. Regardless of tipping practices in that restaurant, this is just annoying and stupid. The sad part is there's a small percentage of these people who believe that what they're giving is actually better than a monetary tip. It's an evangelist's dirty dream to think about a waiter down on their luck without answers, seeing one of these tracts the diner provided, and learning where they can find answers. They probably have a Chris Tomlin song playing in the background of this imaginative story, like some "I'm 14 and this is youth group" music video. Talking during a movie in a movie theater. My wife has a good friend that we always politely decline going to see movies with because she does this. Calling every little cold and sniffle the flu. It's not influenza, you bag of crap. Leaving the door opened after I told you 50 times this day. God damn it, Daniel, why can't you close the fricking doors? People who spit out their gum in parking lots and public walkways. That's actually illegal in some places, like where there's anti-littering laws. Usually a small fine, like £80. Ask your doctor about prescription medicine commercials. As someone from the UK, I frickin' love those things. We don't have them here for fairly obvious reasons, and I never believed that they were actually real until my American girlfriend showed me some on YouTube. It's insane. They're literally going, "Are you dying? Is it bad? I bet it's bad. Wouldn't you like to be better? Well, give us your money and maybe you will." Telemarketing and door-to-door solicitation. I pay for my phone service and I pay taxes on my property. I see it as a violation of my privacy when some butthole intrudes for commercial gain. People who bring their fake service animals everywhere. In some places, it's illegal, and I'm not saying therapy dogs are in this category, but when you let your yappy, shedding, and obviously untrained dog put its crusty butt on a shopping cart, I want to smack you. I had one guy bring in a macaw and leave it on a desk in a furniture store. There is no way in hell that thing is certified. Automated customer service phone numbers. Can I speak to a human, please? All or nothing mentalities, specifically in games and movies. If people like something, it's good. If you don't, it's bad. It drives me nuts when people say things are definitively one or the other unless you use objective evidence. My favorite example of this is if I enjoy something but offer criticism, I catch all kinds of crap because I dare criticize something so great. It drives me frickin' batty. So would you say this mentality is bad? Do you have to arrest yourself now? Checkmate. Not immediate jail, but I think I would put a time limit on ATM use. Not having partitions between urinals. Bear with me here, there are so many regulations in bathrooms from electrical to plumbing code to ADA, but for some reason having a boundary between a place where 2 men are standing 2 feet apart with their eggplants out is not something that anybody thought to make a regulation about. A little privacy and a little shielding against pee spatter is not too much to ask, I think. For all I know, this one might be illegal in other countries, but here, every motherfricker who has a sport bike does it. They go full thrust at 2 a.m. while you're sleeping and give you heart attacks in the middle of the night. Motherfrickers. I wouldn't make a law to limit someone else's freedom for my own comfort. Instead, I'd choose to make it legal to open palm slap people who do things that annoy me. Freedom slap for people who get on an elevator before motherfrickers get off the elevator. Like many things with the word freedom tied to it, this is a great and hilarious idea until other people start abusing the power and just slapping you for slapping them for doing legitimately annoying things. Freedom to slap cuts both ways. Early bird specials on weekdays. This is why old people are on the roads during rush hour, and this is why 50 people are stuck behind one car going 35 in a 55 trying to get to work on time. Standing in the middle of the sidewalk to have a conversation. Not using turn signals while driving. It's already illegal, but rarely enforced. It's common courtesy to let someone know when you're turning, and potentially very dangerous, especially when changing lanes on the highway. I have no problem letting someone in front of me when they use a turn signal. When they just switch lanes back and forth, it's very rude. When I'm sitting at a four-way stop sign and it's my turn to go, and the person who I thought was going straight does a left turn in front of me because they weren't using a turn signal, where did they learn to drive?
Teachers, what is the greatest way a student has misinterpreted one of your assignments? Not an assignment, but a case study in an exam. Intro prac exam. The student had to do an intro health assessment interview, just rapport building and exploring the client's health. This one kid comes in and sits down and proceeds to mispronounce the condition in his case study multiple times. Not only that, but the mispronunciation was for a different type of condition that was not related to the subject at all, and actually didn't exist, and it was obvious he had not been attending classes. He also did numerous other things wrong, so ended up failing. When marks were released, I received a long email from him about how I was unfair in failing him, as he was exemplary, etc., etc. I responded politely, pointing out that he had confused the actual condition in the case with another, unrelated, non-existing condition, and that he needed to consider how he might approach a similar situation in the subsequent and more important exam. I didn't hear from him again, but he did start turning up to classes. At the end of the semester, the student had to address 3 case study scenarios and perform a specified task for each. A different marker took each case. This kid comes in, cool, calm, and confident. He comes to me for his final case, and out of 100+ odd cases, happens to pull the same one as his first assessment with me. Seriously, a 1% chance. And he proceeds to make the same pronunciation error as the first time. I stopped him and asked, "Are you sure it is condition X?" "Yes." "You are 100% sure it is that?" "Yes." "Are you sure it might not be something else?" "Absolutely sure." Okay. The student acting the case knew what I was getting at and struggled to keep a straight face. The actual condition was rheumatoid arthritis. The condition, the student identified it as hemorrhoid arthritis. How on earth do you get those things confused? I am a teacher, but this is my aunt's story. She taught a special class. The instructions said to draw a bar graph. The student had no idea what a graph was, but he drew a beautiful bar. It was a Western saloon, with double swinging doors and a long bar. The bottles were not labeled, but very clearly drawn. This was on a state-mandated test as well. She had to take a break to laugh as she wasn't allowed to say anything. That is pretty cute. But clearly the system has failed this child. I don't know how old they are. High school English teacher. I once assigned extra credit opportunities for my college-bound sophomores that included writing a 3-page short story without using the letter E. There were several other prompts and assignments, and I received a fair number of assignments. However, only one student attempted to write a story without using the letter E. She simply wrote a regular story and neglected to put the E into words where it belonged. So, HR, story, look D, a lot like this, with the TH, spat, S, and all. And yes, I had explained that the story should use words that don't contain E. During the course end test of my ESL classes, the students had to listen to a recording of a lady speaking about her books on science and metaphysics, and then answer a few questions to check their listening skills. For the first question, they had to answer, who is conducting the speech? The girls' answer, the physical box. It ended up becoming a meme among the teachers of the school. We even made a paper craft box with the all-seeing eye on it and said it was the deity of bad test answers. There was this girl who was like 18 in my ESL, English as a second language course, and she was definitely the worst student ever. By the end of each course module, there was a test. Nothing too hard, but she managed to fail it 7 consecutive times. On the 6th time, she decided to try it. Previous tests had been all blank and answered the problem. What's the question for someone's age? Her answer, what birthday happy? On the 7th try, she gets the same test. Same questions. And her answer to the problem from before? What happy? My daughter's class was recently given an assignment. Decorate a paper turkey is something else so that the turkey doesn't get eaten on Thanksgiving. My daughter dressed it up as Santa. It looked pretty good. When I was dropping her off one day, I looked at the other posted in the hall. Someone decorated theirs as a pizza. I'm not sure if that's a good answer or not. I mean, I'm pretty sure, you don't have pizza on Thanksgiving, but I'm sure someone has, or would. Middle school teacher here. Gave the students a packet that was stapled together consisting of 5 pages, assigned only pages 3 and 4 for homework. The pages were not numbered. One student came to me the next day and told me that he couldn't do it because the pages were not numbered. I told him to just count and he would be able to find pages 3 and 4. Even his parents couldn't figure it out. It was a baffling moment for me in my teacher career. Now, I can't deny I have moments of stupidity. I have a brain fart here and there on a really simple thing that shouldn't give me any trouble, but this is on a whole different level. In high school, a girl in my politics class was assigned to do a presentation on euthanasia. Instead, she did the assignment on youth in Asia. At some point, you must have explained that, what euthanasia is. How? I'm a teacher, but this happened to a colleague of mine who teaches religion, Catholic school. He was giving a test where one of the questions was, how are we made in God's image? The student responded, we are made in God's image when a man and a woman love each other very much. The man gives the woman sperms, which need to find the egg. Many sperms die, but some make it to the egg where they rest there for 9 months and then the baby is born. Needless to say, this one made its rounds in the faculty room. I'm just picturing the teacher turning around and being like, wrong goddamn class, dipstick. Minus the goddamn, I'm pretty sure Catholics don't like to take the Lord's name in vain. I am a teacher of English as a foreign language from Hungary. My first job at this school where all the also ran kids from the town were collected. So first lesson at this class and I started to talk about the English language when all of a sudden this guy from the back shouts in English, I am a big penis. I almost died of laughter inside but managed to keep a straight face. Apparently no other people in the room understood anything other than penis. And clearly, the guy wasn't sure either what he wanted to say. Now, to make it clear, you can use the verb of existence in Hungarian to express possession as well. It was quite clear that he meant to say, I have a big penis. I took the opportunity to explain the difference between the verbs be and have in English and how they correlated to their Hungarian equivalents. There was a huge laughter when they managed to put the pieces together, and the class virtually unanimously agreed that he was right the first time. It was funny as hell, I have to say, but I couldn't show that, of course. Plot twist, just this morning I saw a mugshot of the guy at the market. He is wanted by the police. Bloody hell, that is a plot twist. I once worked with a summer intern who was studying economics at a fairly exclusive university. The professor had asked them to write about some business set in Peoria. Apparently, most of them had never heard the saying, will it play in Peoria? For those outside the US, it basically means, will simple folk in the heartland understand? Usually asked of sophisticated works. They assumed Peoria was the name of a hypothetical country which colored their analysis since they could not know anything about the economy there, making it a pretty useless exercise. Apparently the professor was pretty miffed that the well-educated, well-traveled 20-somethings had never heard of Peoria, and the intern was shocked to hear that we all knew that it was a city in Illinois. I'm glad they specified that people outside of the US probably wouldn't know of it because I certainly don't. Not a teacher, but a really funny mistake. A friend of mine was told to present a paper about Charles Darwin. When he looked up his homework at home, his handwritten D looked like a P, and so it occurred that he held a presentation about Mermon Parwin, who is an Afghan singer. I once asked my class to visit a local nature sanctuary with the instructions of finding and identifying as many native and invasive species as they could for extra credit. They were to take close-up pictures of the plants and then take a selfie with the plant in the background, so I knew they weren't just ripping pics from the internet. They were to take those pictures and put them in a simple PowerPoint and turn that in. One student submitted a PowerPoint with him standing in the hallway of his home holding up an iPad with pictures of different people on it. He took more than 50 pictures, everyone with him holding his iPad with a different person's face displayed on it. Anyone with non-white skin was identified as invasive, anyone with white skin was native. These were just random pictures of random people. Cringe factor 1000. Make it over 9,000. How would someone lack such self-awareness and just like that? There's no way they did that and thought, yeah, this'll go down well. I'm a teacher now, but I still remember this from grade 4 when I would have been around 9 years old. The teacher split us all up into groups of 3 and each group received a different assignment task. The teacher didn't explain each project verbally, but handed cards with the task outlined onto each group. I am vague on the wording of the assignments because it was a really long time ago, but my group's task was about volume and we had to use cups to measure water and see how much we could hold using them. For some reason, the other 2 classmates in my group interpreted the assignment task from the teacher as being to drink as much water as humanly possible using cups. I remember knowing they had misinterpreted the task but stayed quiet because I thought it was funny and it sounded more interesting to see how much water they could drink than the actual task. Long story short, they both gave everything they had to the task and they both ended up projectile vomiting like crazy. I wish more people that are actually teachers were explaining this, but whatever, I guess. But this is completely unrelated. One time when I was in primary school, I had science homework to do, and my brother drank the liquid that the homework was about. So when I went to school the next morning, I literally had a note and like a diagram showing my brother drank my homework. I had to write a cause and effects paper for a college class. I couldn't think of a good topic, so I wrote my paper on the cause and effect of not having a topic for your cause and effect paper. The alternate title, because all of my essays have alt titles, was Using Rhetoric to Obscure Lack of Content. The next semester I had a similar class with a teacher I didn't like, so I did all of my papers on topics I knew would miff her. I put extra effort in to make sure that the formatting, grammar, etc. was perfect. Passing a class only because the teacher had no legitimate reason to fail me is awesome. Not gonna lie, that is pretty awesome. But this reminds me of how when I was young I had to do 100 lines in French class because me and the teacher didn't get along and I was kind of a, douchey little brat and whatnot, but they also weren't handling the situation terribly well, to be honest. Anyway, I got told to do 100 lines of any French phrase I decided to do. I was like, anything. So when they came back, there were 100 lines of Je déteste name of teacher over and over and over. In hindsight, it was utterly childish and just like a waste of time, but like they apparently found it funny, and I would eventually in my final year of high school go around to any teacher that I felt as though I had wronged and apologize for any past behavior and express appreciation for their continued patience with me, I suppose. My mother is a teacher, currently to a bunch of 10-year-olds. My favorite is the kid who had an assignment to write several antonyms. He did well except the last example, where he was supposed to write antonym for brave. He simply wrote, I can't say that, a lady's nether regions. I came to the States in 3rd grade, and one of the first assignments was to type up an essay we wrote in class, double-spaced. After a while, I was starting to get really annoyed with the double spacing format. At last, I finished and proudly returned it into my teacher, only to have her burst into laughter. Yeah, turns out double spacing isn't putting 2 spaces between every word. Preschool teacher here asked my students to tell me the first sound in dog. Almost everyone responded, woof. There was an interesting student I had called Andy from Hong Kong. He never took anything seriously and could only put very and adjectives together. Very handsome, for example. I asked Andy's class to write me a cover letter for a job. Andy's response went something like this. I handsome. I 1.7 centimeters long. Have good body, strong legs, nice face. I want job McDonald's. I once asked his friend, also from Hong Kong, if Andy was just as whack in Cantonese. He replied, oh hell yeah, he's extremely stupid. In my science class, we started a project last week where they had to make a poster of a cell analogy that they came up with. For example, someone made a city because the town hall is like the nucleus, a power plant is like the mitochondria, etc. One girl just could not come up with anything. I gave her a bunch of examples and then let her think about it. When I came back to check on her, she said, I'm making a sandwich. I was like, okay, but that might be kind of tough. Did you think about the parts of the sandwich that match up with cell organelles? What is the mitochondria of a sandwich? She was like, okay, I'll pick something else. I get back to her a few minutes later and I ask her, and now she's making a taco. I explained the same thing. Over the course of 2 days, while most other students started drawing, she suggested a British phone booth, a cell phone, Sonic the Hedgehog, a pizza, and a Taco Bell. For each suggestion, I said that she could do it as long as she matched up each part to an organelle, and she'd say, "Oh yeah," because she forgot that I wasn't just letting her draw random stuff. Near the end of the period on Friday, I went to her and said, "Look, let me help you. Draw an island," and I explained half of the organelles for her and even started sketching stuff out. She nodded and agreed to do that. Today, I gave her a poster board and then went to check on her. She said she didn't want to do the island and started drawing a bowling alley with random parts labeled as organelles without even thinking about the functions. I don't even care anymore. In high school English, we were reading Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice. One of the central themes of the book was about class, wealth, struggle. The teacher asked us to write a weekly short essay with a viewpoint from a different class. A friend of mine, who always pays half attention, ended up turning in a paper from world history class on a semi-related subject. The funny thing is he got the paper back with a check mark, meaning the assignment was complete. This info spread across the class and people started turning in a few random papers to test the theory that the teacher wasn't actually reading the assignments. Before you know it, half the class started turning in random crap, everyone getting check marks back, but it got so ridiculous that people weren't even turning in coherent sentences. This went on for about nearly 2 months until one day, when the teacher was about to give the graded papers back, she noticed one of the papers wasn't quite right. She proceeded to read through it, and that's when half the class knew we were screwed. She called out the perpetrator's name and started reading out loud his writing. It literally was, "The grass is sort of green, the sky is really blue, dirt on the floor filled the ground, ice cream tastes good." I have to admit it was really hard for some of us to control our laughter. She then looked at the next paper and then the next and the next. All of them were ridiculously off topic. She flipped, started yelling and pounding the desk with her fist. She went through and gave zeros to half the class. Thank God I turned in actual legit paper that day, as I had started getting paranoid about it when I realized too many students were doing it. You know, on one hand, this is her fault. She wasn't doing her job. This is what happens when you don't do your job right. On the other, guys, you were on easy street. She was just giving you easy passes on whatever you'd hand in, and you decided to squander it and take the mick. You're stupid. Gave grades 2 and 3 students an activity where they had to draw foods from every food group. When I went around checking, I noticed one student had some odd things in his section for grains. I asked him what he drew, and he told me lettuce and spinach. When I asked why he thought those were grains, his face went white and he said, "You mean that doesn't say greens?" It was adorable. Former Seattle High School science teacher here. I had one particular class which was very literal, and I was cracking down on homework being late. I said, "This assignment is due on Wednesday, so to get full credit, email it to me before Thursday so that I can start grading it in time before we meet again." One student, actually named Kevin, asked what time it should be emailed, so I said by midnight. He said midnight would be Thursday. Fair point, so I clarified 11:59 p.m. would work. Another kid said he'd be in Arizona, another time zone, and asked what he should do. I smiled and announced 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. This should not have been a time crunch for anyone. This one girl emailed me Wednesday night at 11:21 p.m. saying, "Here it is, sorry it's early. I stayed up an extra 2 hours waiting for 11:59 p.m., but I'm just so tired and my dad wants me to go to bed. Thanks for understanding." As a teacher of a community college library course, I assigned a student the task of compiling a bibliography of books for high school students on the Middle Ages. Half of the bibliography contained books on midlife crises, empty nester, and menopause. Jesus goddamn crickety Christ, how the hell do people make these mix-ups? I had a foreign exchange student from France in my ELA class. The assignment was to write a personal narrative about an important moment in their life. Instead of reading the essays, I had my students read them aloud if they were comfortable. This was my first mistake. The student, who will be referred to as Jay, goes up to the podium to present. Now, I need to point out that Jay did not speak often in class, and we've been working hard to get him to speak to his peers. I was so proud that he was willing to share his story. He stands up there with his essay and lets this wonderful story unfold. He proceeds to tell the class about his first time having a night emission. He said he went to school and told his friends. He was young. What happened? They suggested that he go home and touch himself. I thought for sure I was not hearing this story correctly at this point. My second mistake was not stopping the presentation. He was so soft-spoken and matter-of-fact that I had not caught on to where the story was headed. He then proceeded to tell the story of the first time he touched himself in the bathroom. My class was in tears. I had no idea what to do and sat there dumbfounded. I asked him why he would share something so personal. Jay responded that a narrative is a story and personal means something you wouldn't want to share. Made sense to him. I ended the class with, what happens in 5th period stays in 5th period. Students asked all the time what happened in 5th period, but as far as I know, no one shared. So they shouldn't. Poor Jay. I mean, good on him for sharing it. Brave little French man, but god damn, I'm glad no one shared that story. If there were less anonymity in this, I would not share this. High schoolers, what cliques exist now? Is it still nerds, jocks, and stoners, or are there new groups that the older generations don't know about? Yeah, those still exist, but now there are sub-cliques of those and new cliques like Tumblr kids, gamers, edgy kids, furries, SJWs, those weird people that call their friends dad. Basically, anything on the internet is a clique in real life. People who call their friends dad? What does that mean? I've never heard of this. What, like they're all like, oh, daddy, oh, dad. I'm trying to like figure this out, but I can't. Is this a fetish thing? Nah, I'm in Maine. We kind of have like a caste system here where the bottom level are like the socially awkward kids. Usually freshmen, junior Tumblr, geeky type, rar XD. The next level is like the theater-ish semi-popular people. Then there's the semi-popular people, and finally the group of girls and the jock-ish guys. There still aren't any if you're British because of school uniforms stopping anyone from expressing themselves. Phones still banned in most places as well. One group of people, just people. Thank God. I graduated a year ago, but it's taken a more internet social media approach. Some people have Twitters, Finstas, etc. It's weird. Kids are weird. I could have told you that. Everything here exists at my school, except we have an extra group called AmITheA kids. Our school has this outdoor pit or amphitheater in the center of campus where all the weird kids go to sit during lunch. These are your Tumblrinos, loners, and most notably furries. Our school in the past a few years ago has actually banned furry accessories like ears and tails. You know, I kind of understand that rule. For one, I guess because schools are usually more interested in stopping occurrences of bullying happening than punishing people who actively bully others. But at the same time, some teacher probably found out it was a fetish thing and went, well, that's not allowed at school. So, in my opinion, perfectly understandable.
Keep those furries in their place.
The ultra-progressive, genderless, communist clique, they only seem to own crop tops, even the boys, and blame their bad grades and lack of success on their oppression by white males. But this is coming from a humanities school in Manhattan, so it might not represent the norm. Not really any exaggerated cliques like in the movies where it's super obvious and separated. It's all merged, to be honest. I hang out with some jocks who are also mildly geeky, and I'm a metalhead skater. The only real clique I've seen are skaters, many of whom are stoners, but I could never fit in with them. All the black kids in my school group up for some reason. Basically, you make friends with anyone and hang out with them, regardless of stereotypes. It's still crap though, because bullies exist and are more subtle. Yeah, I probably said this way too many times, but I imagine with the mass access to the internet and understanding that younger people have of it nowadays, like bullying is just on a whole different level. I was a high schooler a year ago. Thank God I've left that place. But in my school, there were the preps, the nerds, and the loners. Lots of loners. In fact, I was one of them. People who sit by themselves during lunch, people who watch from the sidelines during prom. At first, it was depressing, but I got a different view of school and life than most did. Also, the few friends I did make are stuck with me forever. Only regret is I wished I studied more in high school. I was always the kind of person who could do next to nothing and pass with C's and B's. Yeah, I wish I studied harder in high school as well. Just graduated from art school, mostly ages from 18 to 23 now, and there's more defined cliques in college I found than there was in secondary school, ages 12 to 19. In my art school, the most common stereotype was the aesthetic kids. I suppose they wear a lot of Thrasher, but most have never skated, smokes all the rollies, has anxiety, has alti hairstyle, wears makeup unusually, wears the vintage store/urban outfitters trends, retro sportswear, filler, Adidas, wax jackets, loud collar blocking. Then you had your typical hard boys, chav wannabes, rich kids who dressed in tracksuits, Fred Perry who sold illegal substances and was stoned all the time, got into fights and robbed crap, hippies and new agers. Although being amongst most of the other cliques that were toxic, this person was eventually wrapped in a boho variation of the aesthetic. You have goths, gamers, cosplay community. We have one total scene queen, just one, and surprise, surprise, she ended up being a self-absorbed female dog. So many out-of-touch rich kids, so many who paid for their degrees, some hipsters, a handful of genuine artists, and so much crap. Most of the cliques in our college bonded over two common interests: illegal substances and partying. There were some who never did any illegal substances before going to art school, but eventually they did. There was a few good eggs who genuinely never drank or partied or did illegal substances and seemed to be level-headed. But honestly, our college itself thought it was better and contemporary in the art world and didn't make room for them or their style of art fit. That was the first place I felt it was clique-y. When I first went in there, I was confident, self-assured, and happy in my skin. Everyone else was anxiety-riddled and worried about not fitting in. After 3 years there in a mountain of debt, I feel I've lost my confidence and my sense of self and feel anxiety creeping back up on me. I've been battling with anxiety for years before. Everyone else seems to be more confident and assured in their ways, and there were so many crappy and fake people. This reminds me how I used to visit my friends at a university they used to attend for arts, and I was surprised when they came out of it and basically had zero contact with anyone that they spoke to at that university after the fact. And maybe I'm just dumb and weird, because wherever I go, I usually make at least one meaningful connection and someone that I speak to on a fairly regular basis, but I don't know, I guess it was weird to me. SJWs, cancerous scum of the earth, aka popular kids who wear Supreme and talk down on others. People with far right and left political beliefs only taken seriously in the 1930s. Weebs with far right and left political beliefs only taken seriously in the 1930s. Music kids, STEM kids, people who ironically use the word normie. Christians, people who only talk to other people online. Believe it or not, I dig this perspective on things. Supreme kid, anime and video game kids, like nerds, but extremely bad at school. Most people enjoy either or both of those, just don't only talk about it. This isn't something I've really thought about before, but I'll give it a go. There are the really popular seniors and juniors who are popular and involved in just about every extracurricular activity. Then there are the band, orchestra, and choir kids, which is pretty self-explanatory. Then you have the really well-rounded people who are generally nice, get good grades, involved in a few extracurricular activities and such. And then you have the memers. We also have a very strong LGBT community in our school. Then you have the really trashy group of people who smoke a lot of weed, don't shower, try and fail to skate, and rarely go to their classes. Then you have the Tumblr subset of individuals, which is pretty self-explanatory as well. Many of these groups have bled into each other and have their own subcategories. Oddly enough, I haven't noticed any of the aesthetic kids that many other people are talking about. The athletic kids are the popular ones. The nerdy ones are mostly just the ones who look up weird crap on their computers in class. They're the memers. The art hoes who dress like they're from the 90s and are obsessed with photography. The emos who have a new hair color every week and wear band t-shirts galore. The edgy kids who make everything a joke, like the nerds, are also memers, come to think of it. like a hardcore version of the nerds. The other category of people who don't really do much and don't fit into any category. Hi, I'm a nerd. Also, I think what's interesting about this generation is the blurred lines between groups and stereotypes. Groups seem to intertwine and be more flexible than the cardboard version of what you'd imagine it to be. I would definitely say that's to do with things like the internet and whatnot. People just have a lot more room to explore different things and spread themselves out over multiple subjects. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when being a nerd and someone who openly enjoyed video games to an extreme degree that wasn't like Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed and stuff, you were a nerd. But then you had things like The Big Bang Theory came out, and that sort of made being nerdy just a regular thing. I swear to God, before The Big Bang Theory made it like kind of cool or trendy to like nerdy things, you could not enjoy these things on like a public, open basis without being called a nerd, a weirdo, or obsessive or something. Not even those anymore. In San Jose, it's all of the hype beasts that wear Ultra Boosts or Jordans or Yeezys and everything like that. Nowadays, it falls under pretty much the Tumblr indie rock groups and ghetto sporty people, SoundCloud rappers, STEM kids, which has a decent overlap with the I like to offend people community and are usually the most cringeworthy and irritable of the bunch. It's a lot more individual now than it was though. Girls wearing cat ears frickin' everywhere. I graduated in 2013, but the groups were smart kids who were the most respected by anyone, Asians who were into Wong Fu and Kev Jumba or Niga Higa, photographers and picture-perfect people who knew every single thing about cars, preppy cheerleaders with a lot of makeup, students who sleep 24/7. That one white guy, my school had 90% Asians and 9% Latino. Students who are a little too into anime. Students who have a concerning addiction to League of Legends. Students who can skip most of their classes for track and swim meets or concerts. That student with a 4.5 GPA going to MIT. Okay, so I literally had no idea who Niga Higa was until this very moment. I didn't know it was a YouTuber. I just thought they were listing martial arts or something with really entertaining names to a more ignorant person like myself. In LA, it's the rise of the Hesh community. Basically, everyone who wears camo pants and Tyler the Creator merch or Supreme. These people are the absolute worst. Don't get me wrong, I love Tyler the Creator, but damn, I hate this community of wannabe photographers and edge types. The only true clique in the sense that they're closed off and unwelcoming are the self-proclaimed outcasts, the kids that claim no one but the other weirdos like me. They're not banded together because everyone else rejects them, but because any small difference in interests makes them turn up their nose. I think it's because they refuse to experience anything else that their social skills become stunted, and their opinion of anyone who isn't an outcast is so low. For the most part, groups intersect and people are decent to each other. In my hometown, we had the Flannel Mafia. They were around 40 kids strong within 2 to 3 grays. I don't remember how many there really were. They always wore flannel, shared stories about how they wrapped their four-wheelers or snowmobile around a tree or another object, acted like hicks on purpose, the height of their trucks equaled status, and all of them had Confederate flags in their rooms, despite us living in the North Woods. It was a pretty unorganized clique, but if one of them wanted to get the others together, the others wouldn't mind. It was pretty weird, but they didn't do any real harm, so no one minded much. Pretty people with no real friends, just orbiters. Nerdy kids with dark humor. Girl groups. Meaning groups with only girls. Cool kids. People who listen to non-mainstream music and watch Netflix who think they're cool. Aesthetic kids. Instagrammers, mood, aesthetics, black and white photos, Lana Del Rey and whatever else goes with tea. Party people. People who can only talk about parties. The Gay-Straight Alliance, under which the high school experienced a millennia of peace. As a senior in high school currently, here are my thoughts. There are 2 basic distinctions. You are either A, partier, someone who is down to drink and do illegal substances, or B, someone who is against partying. The A's are then subdivided by how hard you party, and what illegal substances you do for the most part. The alcoholics versus the stoners versus the kids who huff stuff. And the B's divide themselves by seemingly random feuds and grudges, thus breaking them into groups based on what they do, like the typical groups. Same old in Midwest Wisconsin. Valley girls, jocks, stoners, nerds. Currently a junior, there are quite a few loners where I'm from, ones that usually don't fit with the society of my town. Nothing new there. There is a new really patriotic group that I have recognized these past few years, usually racist and negative towards people that don't stand for the pledge and or don't recognize military as outstanding people. Town I'm from is Mondovi, very conservative and secluded. As someone who's 17, there are more groups of kids that try to be rebellious by being offensive, screaming gay, doing illegal substances, and looking to their friends to confirm that what they did was superior to everyone else. They also listen to rap music or whatever artist seems to be at the top of Spotify. Constantly, these are the kids that always have their little earbuds in their ears during class and get in trouble for it. As for the nerds, there are no nerds. In fact, nobody uses that term anymore. There are more kids that look like troublemakers that are geniuses than the typical nerd you see in movies. Another thing, there is that group of kids that scream every single phrase they have ever heard of, such as F-boy, lid, yas, insert something. Who? I don't give AF about that teacher. There are so many I just remembered the cringe group that walk around with a loudspeaker blasting rap music. I got some bad news for you, kid. You might want to sit down for this. If you think there are no nerds around, then you're probably the nerd. Gamers account for a crap ton of people at my school, and country kiddos wearing country crap with their trucks, and emo squadron, which no one really likes, cheerleaders and football squad, stoners, sometimes involved with football and cheerleader squad, student council squad. All these are probably the biggest. It used to be your average high school with all the stereotypes. Now all the chill people left and it's just judgmental preps, halfway crooks, snitches, jocks, F-boys, and a couple emos and furries, nerds spread around. Real shame, but you can't blame anything other than the school administration and the cops running around trying to arrest every kid for everything from jaywalking to cigarettes. I don't think I agree with that assessment very much. I think the issues start at home for the most part. The main cliques nowadays are vapors, some stoners, SoundCloud rappers, nerds, emos, and of course, the group that will never fade, the cool group. But now, it's more dispersed. There's more beef and a lot more gangsters. People are friends, but everyone has something to say about someone as soon as their back is turned. A lot of ravers and drinkers too. The experience of everyone being a two-faced mother at high school. I'm a senior in high school, and this is what I've witnessed. There are the Chads, who are the athletes and work out at the gym as much as they can, and then ask nerds what the heck is going on in class. Then there are the band nerds who are literally obsessed with band and ignore their class lessons to tap their fingers on the desk while reading sheet music that they will never use later in life. Then there are the honor freaks, rich kids who are in honor or AP classes who act like they're superior above everyone else and only talk to kids who are in those higher classes. The wannabe hackers, nerdy kids who go on the school computer and act like they're trying to hack something in the mainframe, but in reality they're doing jack and just messing with the settings. The banger kids who throw bangers every weekend, obsess over them, and then once the party is over, they talk about that same party for months till another banger is thrown. Then weeaboos and cringe kids who obsess over anime, filthy frank, and iDubbbz and act like they're all edgy, when in reality, they're idiots who jump off wooden benches and shout, "I'm gay!" God damn, this one's judgmental. There's a lot of furries at my school. It's kind of awkward and cringy for the rest of us. There's a massive club and everything. I'm pretty sure this is not most high schools, though. Going to school in South Carolina, we have a clique my friends dubbed prepnecks. Kids who go mudding, hunting, and fishing. They drive massive pickup trucks, put Trump stickers and Confederate flags on everything, but they also go to church every Sunday, have really wealthy parents, and live in giant houses in the burbs. Okay, hear me out. Take away the Confederate flag and these guys sound like they'd be pretty cool. Otherwise, I don't give a crap who you vote for. I graduated in 2016, so I'm not a high schooler anymore, but the two newer cliques I noticed in school were kids who only talked about politics all day, every day with each other, and the worst clique of all, weeaboos. They were everywhere at my school. Also, they didn't shower at all. any of them. I don't know why, but all of them, every single last one, smelled like an actual dumpster. I want to say I would most definitely pick the smelly otaku over the guy or gal who just cannot turn off, but I don't know. If you've got really poor hygiene and you actually smell, it would be kind of a tough choice because I hate people who do nothing but talk about politics all day, every day. And while I can definitely tolerate a smelly person for a certain amount of time, all day at school, yeah, I'd probably still pick the smelly otakus, but try and, be informative about the benefits of regularly washing. At my high schools in the United States of America, the social hierarchy is as follows. The population is split up into cells. Each cell is run by one extremely homosexual guy, aka Homoviathan or Alpha Gay. The Homoviathan has a bunch of girls who are his best friends, and according to their social contract, he gives each girl a bunch of crap on everyone else in exchange for the ability to asexually assault them whenever he pleases. Underneath the girlfriends are the straight guys. The straight guys are kissing the Homoviathan's butt in an attempt to get with one of his constituents, and as such become part of his friend group. Finally, you have the straight guys who are not in the dating pool, who exclusively hang out with others of their class. I implore you, members of the LGBT community watching this video, utilize Homoviathan. Put it in the jargon. I don't care. God damn, look at that proud Homoviathan over there. I graduated high school last year, but from what I could see, smart STEM kids who kinda kept to themselves but were pretty cool. The anime kids, nothing inherently wrong with anime, but when you watch so much anime that you have to repeat senior year 3 times, nerds at my school were something like an evolution. I don't really have a better words for it. If you know, you know. You could be a nerd and still be cool, smart, or extremely antisocial. Nerds seem to be sort of the bridges between the smarter kids and the ones who weren't as academically inclined. The art students, the athletes, the hunters, and gun fanatics. Last year birthed a new division, Politipals. You had people from all branches squatting up against the other political party. There were 2 main branches of popular, the ones that were actually nice to people, and the ones who kept to their own cliques and made fun of people who were either a hyper geek or weren't part of any group. Butterflies, the kids who you'd call your average student. Gets good grades, isn't socially extra, isn't a student athlete, probably has a few extracurricular hobbies, pretty much the student who has the potential to befriend anyone except the rude branch of popular. But alas, none of these groups are necessarily mutually exclusive. Medical professionals. What was a time where a patient ignored you and almost died because of it? My dad worked for a company that was based in northern USA. The owner was Canadian and had a cabin up in Canada. He was visiting the cabin a few summers back. He had some medical issues happen and went to the hospital. They said something was wrong with his heart and he needed surgery. He called my dad because he knew my sister was a doctor and wanted a second opinion. They scheduled the surgery in Canada for a few months out. My dad called my sister, and my sister said in the USA they would never let anyone leave the hospital with his condition and he would be in surgery that night. She said he needs surgery now. Well, he left the hospital and a few days later, he was dead. It was a sad I told you so. Okay, the patient in this story is a horse, and in order to fully understand this story, there are a few things about the horse that you have to know. Horses have something in their bodies called a guttural pouch. This warms oxygen that is on its way to the brain. There is a blood vessel that is under the guttural pouch, and sometimes horses can get a fungus in the guttural pouch that slowly erodes the blood vessel, causing nosebleeds. The vessel will rupture, heal, and the cycle goes on until one day it ruptures and the horse bleeds out. This condition is called guttural pouch mycosis. It is diagnosed via endoscopy and is deadly if left untreated. Now, I'm in no way a medical professional, but heard this story from an equine vet. She was called out to a farm because a horse was experiencing repeated nosebleeds. She was pretty positive that the horse had guttural pouch mycosis, and she and the owner decided that the vet would scope the horse. She went to get the scope, and when she got back, the owner had changed their mind. She didn't want the horse scoped. The vet left. She was never told definitively that the horse died, but the next time she went to the farm, that horse was nowhere to be seen. Aw man, horses are like my second favorite animal that I regularly see. Equine creatures are just cool, but then again, I just got back from the safari park and I'm kind of vibing with sea lions right now. Sea lions are dope. I'm a vet tech, so my problems are my clients, not my patients. Patients just do what they're gonna do. But boy, do we have a problem with client compliance. You'd be amazed how many times we get something to this effect. Dog comes in very sick. Through testing, we find out the dog has Addison's, heart failure, thyroid disease, something else that is a lifelong disease that can only be treated with lifelong medication, not cured. We explain all of this, and possibly after an expensive hospital stay, we send owner home with a month's worth of medication. Several months go by, and O calls upset that their dog is sick again. Yeah, you haven't picked up any heart medication in 5 months. Have you gotten it at another clinic? No. Yeah, no, come in, and thanks for messing up everything. Or 2 years ago, you came in for your regular exam. We talked to you about preventing heartworm disease. You said our prevention is poison and you'd use a safer, more holistic method, and now your dog is here coughing and weak. Hello, heartworms. No, your essence of lavender, your rosemary, your coconut oil, your apple cider vinegar, and every other bit of bullcrap you can throw at me doesn't kill heartworms. Your dog isn't a raw chicken. Stop marinating him, for God's sake. Also, gotta love the very classic, I gave him his antibiotics, pain meds and steroids for 2 days and he got better, so I stopped. Now he's worse again, and I cannot stress enough the importance of restricting activity after your pet has surgery. Yes, she feels good, enough to run around the yard maybe. That's because she's on pain medication. That does not change the fact that we just removed multiple organs out of her belly hours ago. And now you're bringing her in with her intestines swinging in the breeze and blood everywhere. Thanks for nothing, dumb butt. Just do what we tell you. I swear to God, so many lives and a bunch of heartache and money could be saved if people just did what we tell them to do. You're paying us money for our opinion. You're taking the time out of your day to come sit down and talk with us, all just to go, well, yeah, but I read this on Google, or, well, my dog is too smart to do something like that. I know my dog better than you. It's baffling. Yes, you do know your dog better than me, but I know dogs in general better than you, and I can say you'd be hard-pressed to find a dog that won't do some stupid crap in their life because they're a dog. Your dog is not so smart that he won't screw his sister, eat a bunch of grapes, or rip apart his bandages. It is your job to watch over them and ensure they don't do those things. So just do what we frickin' tell you to do, Christ's sake. It sounds like this person needed to vent, but also this all sounds like, I'm guessing they're not being specific. It sounds like they're talking about a single individual. Medical student here. Last summer I was doing ER practice and a guy came in with a massively swollen leg, which was deep vein thrombosis, a clot in your leg vein that can dislodge and travel straight to your lungs and kill you. That same guy came in some months prior with the same condition and was explicitly told that if his leg hurts again and starts to swell, to sit down and not walk. Apparently this time the guy came, he walked to the ER, like 20 minutes of walking. He didn't die though. I guarantee if it's an older gentleman, they probably just completely disregarded that information that you told them and went, I'll walk it off. And when that didn't work, then they said, okay, maybe I should go to the hospital. Diabetic patient who broke his ankle left the cast on for 6 months because he didn't want to bother coming back to the hospital. Our front bubble stunk of rotting flesh. It's a fairly large room and the cast was still on. We move him to another area. I'm hovering over ortho as he is taking the lower part of the cast off. On the outside, on the medical aspect of his ankle, you could see there was some fluid from the inside that stained the cast, this nasty color. When the cast popped off, it looked like zombie flesh, oozy, gangrenous, stunk like death. The funniest part about it is when the ortho resident is talking to him about what the plan is going to be, a fly kept buzzing around and landing on his exposed, nasty leg. I am not a medical professional, but one time my grandpa had a surgery and was told not to smoke for a while, and when he got home, he smoked and burst an artery and bled all over the back seat of my dad's car. That sounds terrifying. Imagine taking a puff of a cigarette and then just gush, blood everywhere. Had a very drunk, less than cooperative older gentleman come into the trauma ICU after getting into a fight with his lady friend, who then stabbed him in the neck with a screwdriver. She luckily missed his airway, but nicked a large vessel. He had a hematoma forming on the side of his throat that was growing quickly and endangering his breathing. Wheezing and stridor could be heard with every breath, and he was doing a good bit of bleeding. He needed surgery to repair the vessel and decompress the hematoma. Dude was so wasted and uncooperative that he blatantly refused and kept trying to leave. The doctors were scrambling to get paperwork in order to do the procedure with an emergency consent, as the patient was obviously impaired. Patient frantically motions for me to come to his bedside. He's coughing and sputtering. I look him straight in the eyes after assessing to make sure he was still maintaining good oxygen saturation and say, "You can't breathe." He nods frantically. "Well, that's a shame because you sent away the surgeon that was going to fix that. You want me to go get him?" More frantic nods. "You going to let him do the surgery and fix your throat this time?" Continued frantic nods. I call over my shoulder to the now group of OR personnel discussing the logistics of keeping the operation legal. He consents. They jump and literally run with his butt to surgery. Fixed him up. He spent a couple days on a breathing machine just to prevent his throat from swelling closed post-op. If we would have let him walk out, he would have suffocated in the car park. I have not been in the medical field for long, 6 months at most, but have seen many people who come in for rehab after having a heart attack who ignore their fluid restriction. I've seen this turn into a fatal situation 3 times already. Drinking water to death, who would have thunk it? And that is where the saying everything in moderation comes from. Because yes, you can in fact drown yourself to death internally by drinking too much water, apparently. And no, don't worry, it would have to be just an insane amount of water, like, I don't know, 50 liters or something. Every opiate addict that refuses to go to the hospital after you give them naloxone to reverse their overdose. They regain consciousness and refuse transport, and we explain that the naloxone will wear off and they will be right where they started. They still refuse care. We get back in the rig, drive around the block, and wait for 911 to be called again. My own experience with doctors is that, because I hate every medical procedure, I just tell them that no painkillers, nothing. Dentists always start drilling and pulling right away. My tongue needed surgery, so they just cut it, and I took no painkillers. They told me that I might be the easiest patient ever. No need for painkillers, just do what you gotta do and we can get out fast. Actually, I have a minor, nowhere near death one myself. Needed to have an abdominal ultrasound, told not to use the bathroom for however long beforehand, but it was mid-morning and I woke up needing to go. I told myself I'd drink a bunch and I'd fill up again fast. Nope, had to sit in the waiting room for hours until I was full enough to be good. Not a doctor, but here's what happened to me. My mother is an anti-vaxxer and generally against medical intervention. I didn't get my vitamin K shot as a baby, and I've never been vaccinated for anything. At around 5, I was being an idiot kid and playing around with old bamboo sticks. I liked to dip them into this nasty bucket of water we had that had been rotting in the backyard forever and fling it around to see the droplets in the air. We later found out that a neighbor kid had used it as a toilet at least once. I came down with something horrible that probably almost killed me. Very, very high fever, lethargy, nausea, and little red spots covering my entire body. I don't remember much from that time, but I remember how awful it was. My parents assumed that it was chickenpox and decided not to take me to a doctor because it would strengthen my immune system. I was actually fine eventually, but it did definitely feel like I was going to die at the time. Fast forward to age 13, I actually got the chickenpox and luckily fairly mild, but this left the question of the mystery illness's identity. I've done some Googling and my best guess is typhoid, but I have no clue really. I'll be 18 soon and I'll be getting vaccinated as soon as I can. I don't understand even at an early age what your fixation might have been with that apparent poop bucket. My dad is a veterinarian. My clinic calls them patients, their owner, clients. We had a dog come in with strychnine poisoning. You start convulsing and any stimulus, no matter how small, makes it worse. The very same convulsions cause a chain reaction and eventually spreads to every muscle in your body. You die from exhaustion, or when the neural pathways that control breathing stop working, and it is a painful way to die. We save this dog, miraculously. We tell the owner to put the poison somewhere where the dog can't get it. Dog comes back in later, same symptoms, same poisoning. We save it, somehow, again. Owner promises and swears it will be gone this time. Nope. Third time is the charm. Dog is saved yet again. At this point, the dog really isn't a dog anymore. Might as well be a potato at this point. It can barely move. Owner says that they can't lose the dog or bear to see it in pain. The poison will be disposed of. Yeah, no, the fourth iteration of the poisoning killed it. You saved it the first 3 times. Why was this time different? I feel really bad for that dog. A patient who had a spinal decompression and fusion procedure was recommended to continue using a walker when ambulating and also to arrange for personal assistance at home. Decided she was too good for help and a walker is for the disabled. Fell out of bed, a nail from the hardware punctured into the spinal nerve. She was readmitted to the hospital and is now paraplegic. From the initial need for a walker, the patient now needs to be assessed for a wheelchair. The patient didn't die, but nevertheless, a severe consequence. I don't know why this kind of reminds me of how I was taking the pictures off the wall on a narrow stairway when we were moving furniture, and they were like, "Why are you taking the pictures off the walls?" And I was like, "Because I'm being careful. I don't want us to hit them and for them to fall down." And they were like, "No, don't worry, we'll be careful." It's like, no, you don't understand. Me being careful is taking the pictures off the wall. Man, though, that is some unfortunate luck, and I feel really awful for that patient. Like, that is just a result of hubris. Patient with one leg, instructed not to get up without assistance. Bed alarm in place. Bed alarm sounded. We run in there just in time to see him up. He says, "I wanted to see if I could walk without my prosthesis." So basically, he tried to walk with one leg. Didn't work. Not me, but my dad is a cardiac nurse. This is probably my favorite story from him, and yes, I feel awful saying that. Anyways, you know how smoking is bad for your lungs? It's also really bad for your heart. It causes buildup in your arteries that can cause heart attacks or strokes. My dad performs surgeries on way too many smokers and sees some of them repeatedly. My dad, the other nurses, and every doctor will tell them they will be back if they don't quit smoking. But, of course, they don't. Now, for the part that is actually why it's my favorite. My dad is obese and has never denied it. One time, while having the stop smoking talk with a patient, he got super offended and told my dad that being obese was bad for his heart and blah blah. My dad's response, "I can lose weight. You can't lose stupid." Guy got stabbed in the arm with a knife, refused a tetanus shot, came back with full-blown tetanus, arching his back, clenching his jaw, straight to the ICU. Had a patient who had just gotten a below-knee amputation. We gave him the prosthesis shortly after surgery, as soon as surgeons signed off, and told him several times to take it easy. He was very excited and we knew he was not going to listen. To stress the issue, we had the owner of the company and several co-workers who are also amputees talk to the patient. Being a new amputee, the limb goes through a lot of changes and is still healing. After he took his new leg home, we hadn't heard from him in a few weeks. He even cancelled his follow-up appointment since he was doing great. A week after that, one of our co-workers calls us and tells us that he was at the surgeon's office, just stopping by to say hi and bring them breakfast, and saw said patient waiting to be seen since his limb was scabbed over, with several lesions and extremely discolored. After asking what happened, he told her that he was feeling so good with the prosthesis, he decided to run a marathon and Tough Mudder. He ended up getting a major infection due to the mud and is extremely lucky that he did not need a revision, making him an above-knee amputee. For anyone who doesn't know what Tough Mudder is, I don't know if it's a UK thing exclusively, but it's basically a mud run. That's it, really. It's just lots and lots of mud. The patient was me and the medical professional was my aunt in this situation. Isn't blood related to me, but she's basically family. I can't remember the actual medical term for it, but I call it deadly asthma. This happened last year, which makes it the second time I've had it. First time I had to go to the ER at Boston Children's because no one could figure out what was wrong with me and I was getting increasingly worse. Basically, the symptoms are close to the symptoms of walking pneumonia. This time that I got it, I was told to take my neb treatment 3 times a day and take some heavy meds. Now, I have had asthma my entire life. I tend to not take my rescue inhaler if I feel like I can get through an attack. I get 2 to 5 attacks a day, so yeah, I'm pretty severe. I take Symbicort, but had basically lost my inhaler and never really looked for it, so I stopped taking it. It pretty much allows me to not even have a single attack every day, which is awesome. Being a teenager, I am kinda irresponsible with my own well-being, so I stupidly didn't do what I was told. I ended up not taking the nebs because they make me sick, make my tremors worse, and make me unable to walk normally for a couple of hours. Well, let's just say at night I was suffocating and close to just not breathing at all, but still said I'm fine, which more or less was because I was delirious. I was driven to my pediatrician's office and they put me on the neb. They said I could have crashed, medical term, not car crash, and died if my mom waited to drive me there. My oxygen levels were low and I was about to pass out because I couldn't breathe. My aunt gave me a good scolding, told me she'd send me to the ER if I didn't take my neb treatment, so I followed her orders that time. Took me another 2 to 3 weeks to fully recover and had to be put on even more meds. I think sometimes I underestimate the dangers of my condition because I go through it so much. Let this all be a lesson to, not do that again. In this story, it wasn't the patient that ignored the warning, but the hospital staff. This isn't my story, but a story from my professor that ultimately led to him stop practicing and start teaching. My professor has a heart of gold, just the most genuine man you could ever meet. He works in an adolescent psych ward. Well, one kid comes through and they really bond. He spoke about him with such a big smile. You can tell he really cared for him. He loved this kid, but he notices something is off. He speaks with the staff on the unit and asks them to make sure he is on self-deletion watch. His gut is telling him the kid is planning something. Well, he was right. The staff didn't check in at all until the next morning. The kid had managed to delete himself. It just completely broke my poor professor, shattered him personally and professionally. It's such a terrible story to hear because it was so preventable, but no one else decided to care. As for me, well, I've had patients completely ruin surgeries from just not listening. One guy got a spinal fusion surgery. Very painful. One thing you can't do is twist your back, so I'm still really new, bright-eyed and hopeful, and I go see this patient. I introduce myself and ask him how he is. He tells me that he's in 10 out of 10 pain sometimes and he can't figure out why. I try to be helpful, ask him what he's doing when he's in pain. Well, instead of just telling me, he frickin' shows me, grabs the bed rails and twists like he was trying to snap his spine. He's screaming and I'm horrified and kind of yelling at him to stop. We get the situation under control. I go back and explain all of his precautions again. He tells me to go screw myself. If he's in pain, I'm not doing my job. Well, he was discharged AMA and he ended up ruining his surgery. Hope he enjoys his excruciating back pain. That's really sad about the kid, but weirdly enough, I actually met someone the other day who said they had a fused spine. Be me, ER doctor. Sir, there is a large tumor in your spine pushing on your cord. That's why you can barely move. I've already spoken to our spine surgeon. You're going to go directly to the OR. Patient says, I'm a tough son of a gun and I don't need no surgery. 30 minutes of me screaming at him later. For the love of God, I promise I know what I'm talking about. If you don't get surgery, you will be a quad. The patient simply retorts, screw you, I'm going home. Patient became a quad. Wife sent me a very long apology letter. Be me again, sir. One of your cardiac enzymes has come back elevated. I think you are having a heart attack. I've already spoken with the cardiologist and we are going to get you over to the cath lab now. The patient's response?
Bro, I'm in town for Comic-Con and I am not missing it. I'll come back if it gets worse.
30 minutes of me screaming at him. For the love of God, I know what I'm talking about. Pretty please with frickin' sugar on top. Stay! The patient uncaringly replies,
Gotta get to the con. My favorite artist is on at 4.
Dude came back in cardiac arrest. Much of my job is to mess up Darwinian evolution. Weirdly enough, I have also thought about that in terms of doctors and how, like, you know, people with genuine hereditary issues are, like, the most in need of them. And that has got me thinking about the friend that told me that every single male in his family line has, like, had a heart attack around their 30s. Historians, what is the strangest chain of events you have studied? Perhaps when a tiny Spanish town wanted to make a war against Napoleon and his allies, and so declared war on Denmark. Only they forgot they had declared war on Denmark, and so did Denmark. And then in the 1980s, someone was going through records in, like, the library or something, and discovered, oh crap, we never actually made peace with Denmark. And so in the 80s, they finally made peace from their war against Napoleon in the early 1800s. Or maybe Maybe it's the tale of the army of Liechtenstein. Liechtenstein was incredibly loyal to the Holy Roman Emperor, so of course when the Emperor sends out a call for troops, the 80-man army of Liechtenstein volunteered. They went down to Italy and promptly saw almost none of the actual war. Instead, they hung out with an Italian baker a lot. When the war was over and they were being recalled home, they asked if they could bring said baker home with them. Their liege said yes, so they brought him back with them, and he served faithfully in the army until his death by natural causes. That's the story of how an 80-man army went off to fight a war and returned with 81 men. I would also rather hang out with a rad baker than go to war, but apparently that baker was then like, I'd rather go to war than be a baker. I'm Australian, and in the latter part of 1932, a wildlife management program happened and military action had to take place. So on the 2nd of November, war was declared on the emus. Locals attempted to herd the emus into an ambush. However, the birds split into small groups and ran so that they were difficult targets. On the 4th of November, Major Meredith had prepared for an ambush near a local dam, and over 1,000 emus were spotted heading towards their position. This time, they waited until the birds were at point-blank range before opening fire. By the 8th of November, only 6 days into the war, 2,500 rounds of ammunition had been fired. Considering so many shots were fired, the emu casualties were not great. The number of birds killed is unclear. One account claims just 50 birds, but other accounts range from 200 to 500. So a bunch of trained soldiers with machine guns lost a war against large, flightless birds. The Emu War. It's old news to me personally, but if you didn't know about that, it's kind of interesting. Archduke Franz Ferdinand being assassinated in 1914 led to 9/11. The Archduke's assassination, of course, leads directly to the outbreak of World War I, which in turn results in the 1917 Russian Revolution, where Lenin and the Bolsheviks seize power in Russia and form the Soviet Union. Fast forward to the late 1970s, when the Soviets invade Afghanistan. In true Cold War fashion, the Americans help local groups to fight back and drive out the Soviets. One such individual who fought along in such groups, Osama bin Laden. A regiment in the Polish army adopted a bear after its separation with its mother, and named it Wojtek. This bear carried artillery rounds to the howitzer cannons, smoked cigarettes, and drank vodka with the men. Wojtek was considered a soldier by the Polish government and given pay for its duty. The regiment even made a new patch or logo of the bear carrying an artillery shell. Wojtek, I love Wojtek. The story of Wojtek's cool as hell. In World War II in the Pacific Theater, an American airplane was shot down by Japanese fire. There was only 9 survivors, and 8 of them were captured by the Japanese, while 1 of them escaped to sea. The 8 men who were captured by the Japanese were all tortured and killed in horrible ways, all of them dying painful and drawn-out deaths. The one who escaped almost died himself, as he was at sea for several days in a life raft with few supplies. Eventually, though, he was rescued by American forces and made a full recovery. He continued to fight in the war and survived through the rest of the conflict, and after the war he married and had several children. That man's name was George Herbert Walker Bush. Is there anyone else besides the Bushes that, had a child that later went on to also become president? In Monza, Italy, King Umberto I went to a small restaurant for dinner, accompanied by his aide-de-camp, General Emilio Ponzia Vaglia. When the owner took King Umberto's order, the king noticed that he and the restaurant owner were virtually doubles, in face and in build. Both men began discussing the striking resemblance between each other and found many more similarities. Both men were born on the same day of the same year, March 14th, 1844. Both men had been born in the same town. Both men married a woman with the same name, Margherita. The restaurateur opened his restaurant on the same day that King Umberto was crowned King of Italy, and on the 29th of July, 1900, King Umberto was informed that the restaurateur had died that day in a mysterious shooting accident, and as he expressed his regret, he was then assassinated by an anarchist in the crowd. What the actual hell? Is this like a Fear and Hunger friggin' mimic or something like that? Doppelganger? And yes, for those of you who know, I've got into the video games Fear and Hunger, and they are super good. I'm playing Terminus as we speak. But anyway, that is too many coincidences. I need to look this up. World War I, more accurately, the descent into it. After the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, there were several attempts by ambassadors and diplomats to make peace, but obviously all failed. Starting with the assassination itself that occurred after several failed attempts earlier in the day, Gavrilo Princip's encounter with the Archduke only happens because the driver of the Archduke's vehicle takes a wrong turn onto the street where Princip is sitting outside a diner. Days after, a meeting between the ambassador from Austria-Hungary and from Russia to Serbia, intended to draft an agreement to prevent or limit military action, ends prematurely when the Russian ambassador has a heart attack and dies. Perhaps the war could have been limited to a German-backed Austria-Hungary against Serbia if it was known that no Serbian territory would have been annexed. If that was clear, Russia might not have supported her Serbian allies, but because the Russian ambassador to Serbia was dead, the only ambassador communicating with Russia was from Germany, and he doesn't know that Austria-Hungary wouldn't annex any territory. And so, Russia's full support is behind Serbia, as Germany's is behind Austria-Hungary. This means that once Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia, Germany has no choice but to do the same to Serbia's allies, Russia, France, and Belgium. And all three of those countries' allies return the favor unto Germany and Austria-Hungary. And the Ottoman Empire wakes up and joins on Germany's side, and so on. One wrong turn down a city street gets a ruler shot and killed, one peace negotiation falls apart by a chance heart attack, and one failure in communication drags two entire networks of alliances into war, regardless of whether or not any given country has any real stake in the inciting conflict. Not a historian, just a huge history nerd, but this is one of my favorite things to talk about. Let me tell you about the William D. Porter, a warship commissioned in 1943. It was mainly known for being the biggest dumpster fire in the history of oceanic warfare. Originally, it met up with the battleship Iowa, which carried FDR, who was going to Iran and Cairo for a summit between Allied leadership. The Porter's job was to escort the Iowa and ensure that no attack would befall on the president. When leaving port in Norfolk, someone didn't raise the anchor up all the way, which tore off a neighboring ship's railing and lifeboat mounts. The next day, a live depth charge went overboard and exploded, freaking out everyone aboard the Iowa. 2 days later, FDR wanted to see how well the Iowa can defend itself against planes, so the Iowa released a number of balloons to shoot at. Some drifted into the space of the Porter and, in a quest of redemption, shot the balloons down with no issue, after which all of the escort ships decided to do a drill with their torpedoes. The Porter tested, but somewhere launched a live torpedo straight towards the Iowa. The Porter then tried to tell the Iowa, "We may have shot a frickin' torpedo at you, move." But the whole escort commanded radio silence, so they tried using a signal lamp. But the operator told them that the Porter was just backing up. So rather than being held for high treason via incompetence, they broke radio silence and disaster was averted. It was at that point the Iowa told the Porter and its crew to F off back home. Eventually, the crew faced an inquiry over the incident and then were exiled to the Aleutian Islands, where everything went relatively well until a crew member came back to the ship, drunk off his butt, and wanted to play with the guns. The shot landed in the base commander's front lawn while hosting a party for other officers and their wives. Their tale ends during the Battle of Okinawa, where they were tasked with keeping kamikazes away from the bigger ships. One kamikaze plane darted straight towards the Porter and was shot down before the plane had reached the ship. Unfortunately, the plane was moving so quickly, when it hit the water, it carried just enough to the bottom of the Porter, detonated with enough force to take it out of the water and sink. It may not be weird, but my god, it's hilarious. I'm no historian, but my dad is. He made me watch a documentary about the Revolutionary War and the events that led to it for summer homework. Apparently, a younger officer was friends with a native chief called Half King, who was part of a tribe alliance allied with the British. The young officer and Half King were traveling through land as they walked into a group of Frenchies. Half King, eager to show his strength to the Brits, killed them all, but the Frenchies turned out to be an ambassador and/or dignitary. They knew that this would not go unanswered, so they built a small fort, but could not build the defenses enough, so they were overtaken by the French. The French made the young officer sign the treaty on behalf of England, which was problematic because he struggled with French. He signed it, and the French waved it in England's face because it disgraced them. They couldn't let this go unanswered, so they had a war. The French and Indian War, which put the colonies in debt and thus increased taxes, which led to the revolution. The craziest thing that caught me by surprise was that the young British officer in the beginning was George frickin' Washington. So the general who ended the American Revolution was the same guy who made the mess. I guess if you start something, you probably should finish it. Okay, this guy blames George Washington, but is no one over here looking at Half King covered in blood and frogs' legs and the little ponytails that I think the French used to wear in the 1800s? I don't know, I'm just going off of what I saw in The Duelists, which is a really good movie. Go watch that film. It's Ridley Scott's directorial debut. Smuggler's arm shark incident. In the 1930s, a large tiger shark was caught in Sydney and put into a public aquarium at Coogee Beach. The shark gets sick and a few days later vomits up a human arm while people are watching. The arm has a tattoo that the police are able to identify as a local gangster who is missing. The police track down his associates and get a confession and solve the case. Does anyone else remember that cartoon, Kenny the Shark? In 1949, the brand new U.S. Air Force orders the design and building of a supersonic jet bomber to be able to outspeed and outmaneuver Soviet air defenses and fighters. Okay, that's doable. Just one problem. The plane will be cruising supersonically between altitudes of 50,000 and 70,000 feet. If a person was to eject with a normal ejection seat and parachute, there's no oxygen and the air temperature is a balmy minus 70 degrees Fahrenheit, which is why jets are pressurized. The pilots and crew would promptly die by a combination of oxygen starvation and freezing. So the manufacturer comes up with a set of individual escape capsules for the crew with an integrated oxygen and pressurization system. Great! Except no one has ever done escape capsules on a US aircraft before. It has to be tested on something else before a human goes for a ride. Something else being alive at the time of the test and remaining so for the duration. Pilots have strict physical standards, and the US Air Force actually had a chimp colony for use in research and testing. Problem solved. Or not. Non-pilot air crew have much less strict physical standards and can be a bit, well, hefty. The engineers have to find a heavier animal. Some genius whose name is lost to us came up with the idea of using juvenile American black bears to simulate the heavy weights of humans. Not surprisingly, a bear is going to have rather strong opinions about being taken out to a desert, shoved into a small capsule, and ejected from an aircraft traveling at Mach 2. The answer, of course, is to sedate the bear before they take their ride. Turns out, much like people, not every bear responds to sedation the same way. One young bear, upon waking up while being loaded into the escape capsule and surrounded by humans, got understandably ticked off and attacked one of the engineers. Despite the setback, the escape capsule worked and the B-58 saw active service from 1960 to 1970. Modern heavy industry due to one lousy deal. Treaty of Versailles ends World War I. Germany loses a great deal of its iron-producing regions in the agreement, but is left with a great deal of magnesium-producing regions. Magnesium is brittle and cannot be forged through impact like iron, so Germany develops the 5, 15, and 30-ton presses. Cue World War II. Allies shoot down German planes and see single, large stamped parts which improve strength drastically, while reducing weight while Allies use smaller pieces bolted together. The US takes the 5,000 and 15,000-ton presses, while the USSR takes the 30,000-ton as war reparations. Improvements are made, large industrial parts are manufactured faster, cheaper, and stronger, triggering massive production of aircrafts, turbines, space shuttles. The Mester 50,000-ton press in Cleveland is still considered part of national security. Was built in the 50s under the heavy press program, and in 2008, $100 million was spent refurbishing it as it is that important. In 790, when the Viking Age began, Vikings set out to pillage and conquer England. They were very successful, but ultimately failed, except that in 911, the Duchy of Normandy was founded by a Viking named Rollo, whose grandson is William the Conqueror, technically still a Viking. Conquered England, and one of Rollo's daughters, I think, was married to the Duke of Aquitaine, which gave future English kings, whom were descendants of William and therefore Rollo, a claim on Aquitaine. Half of France. So the Vikings came from a village in Scandinavia, terrorized England for a long time, only for a couple of Vikings and Rollo to get baptized and get some land right next to England and his descendants to conquer England and start of the 100 Years' War. In hindsight, the raid of Linden's Fair ended in a 100 Years' War and bitter rivalry between the English and the French in a claim to the French throne, which ended only in the French Revolution, almost exactly 100 years later later after the raid of Linden's Fair. I don't know what's going on with the person that wrote this, but it feels like they were drinking while they were writing this and just progressively getting worse and worse at writing and spelling as they went. It's honestly frustrating. But anywho, bloody Scandinavians, barbarians, the lot of them invading my country. Not nearly as good as the Romans that at least had the decency to design our roads. Of course, they enslaved us and made us build them, but hey, what you gonna do? Fairly similar to the Borneo cat drop in the 1940s, Mao Zedong implemented the Four Pests campaign. It was an event wherein the killing of typical agricultural pests earned rewards. At least they believed they were pests. The famines of China were caused by locusts and weevils, which were being eaten by the sparrows, mice, and frogs that the campaign advocated to be killed. Children would go into the field and return with strings of dead birds and mice killed by stones. Some regiments were introduced as well to monitor the presence of the pests, so that those who had realized the reverse logic would be fined for their misconduct. Another contribution to the reason why millions of people have died under communism. Senator Charles Sumner, making a speech on the U.S. Senate floor on May 19, 1856, denouncing slave power and insulted some U.S. senators, including Senator Andrew Butler. Senator Butler's nephew, U.S. Representative Preston Brooks, was so angry over the speech that he went into Sumner's office and nearly beat him to death with a cane on May 22, 1856. Then a couple of congressmen and senators responded by challenging Brooks to a duel. The irony is that Brooks died 7 months later from the coup after he attacked Sumner, while Sumner lived on as a senator for another 18 years. Have you heard of the Battle of Karanshabesh, where the Austrian army lost a battle to itself? The Austrians were looking to stop the Ottomans from capturing the town of Karanshabesh and thus marched into the area. Some hussar scouts ahead of the army ran into some migrating Romani people who sold them some schnapps. When the cavalry were getting nice and drunk, the infantry ran into them and demanded to be given some alcohol. The cavalry refused, and during the ensuing argument, someone fired a shot. During the shootout between friendly cavalry and infantry, some people began shouting, "Torci, torci," which set off a huge panic in the drunken ranks of the hussars. As the drunken cavalries are riding to their camp, the soldiers in the camp are panicking and shooting at whatever shadows are riding past them. A camp commander in the meantime also ordered a friggin' artillery salvo at the cavalry. The army is quickly dissolving into a mass of rooting men. The officers tried to stop the panic, but they are shouting "halt" in German, and due to the multi-ethnic nature of the Austrian army, the orders were misheard as cries of "Allah" by Serbian, Hungarian, and Italian soldiers. All in all, the Austrian army lost several hundred men and had to retreat, while the Ottomans easily took Karanshabesh. And then I'm sure they took plenty of slaves and castrated them all, because that's what the Ottomans used to do. The Arab slave trade was frickin' brutal. Also, sorry if I mispronounced anything. The most interesting, at least to me, research I've done was when I was doing research on late medieval to early modern superstitions and the supernatural. I had to read a lot of almanacs from the 16th to 17th century. Almanacs are basically small booklets with a lot of varied information. They will typically also contain a history of the most important events of the past year. What's so interesting about this is that you'll read stories such as the city of Constantinople was attacked by a dragon, the fire claimed some casualties, but the horses were saved by the grace of God. While at first sight this just seems like a made-up story that nobody could ever believe to most of us, it becomes so much more relatable when you think about it from the perspective of the average European in late medieval Europe. The thing about the late medieval worldview in Western Europe was that it almost entirely revolved around Christianity. The world was seen as a duality. So while there was obviously some neutral scenery, almost every event and every living thing was seen as an expression from either God or the devil. Generally, humans were seen as divine and owning a soul, whereas animals could be anything. What it usually boils down to is that they would be seen as divine if they were in some way a part of a biblical story regarding God, whereas they would be considered demonical if they were referenced in a story about Lucifer. Meanwhile, animals that weren't mentioned in the Bible were seen as neither possessing a soul nor being an expression of the devil, basically neutral. The question whether black people possessed a soul soul and were thus fully human and divine was a genuine theological question to Western Europeans at that time, seeing as they weren't mentioned specifically in the Bible. At least in the mind of late medieval Europeans, they weren't mentioned specifically, and it wasn't clear whether they were a part of the same divine creation like they were. So, in this case specifically, a dragon, which referenced the biblical snake, was the manifestation of the devil, while the horses surviving was the manifestation of God. What struck me the most about this is that so many things about medieval times are so completely foreign to us until you try to think about it from their worldview, when your world isn't understood through our current scientific interpretations, but instead is completely doused in this duality. Stories like these become so much more believable and relatable. What? Ex-homeless people. Where did you go during the day? The library, brah. That's a no-brainer. Communication, opportunity, education, and entertainment all available there for free. That is an excellent suggestion. I always just thought if I went homeless, I'd maintain my gym membership, use the showering facilities, apply for jobs, get really, really into exercising, attempt to completely dominate any local bum fights. Never actually been homeless, which is good, but probably the closest was in August when I drifted around for work on a bike. Had a book bag with mostly clothing, as well as a sheet, a canteen, and a salt container, because salt is pretty useful, and an empty flask. On the handle was a container with food, water, and some utensils. Across the handlebar was a loosely tied walking stick for protection. In case I needed to, I could stay somewhere like the local church. However, I managed to get home by dark, so all was good. I will say the water factory wasn't easy, since I had to keep refilling it, and then once my bike fell with my container, and the gallon jug of water broke. If I actually had to, I could squat in the woods, but that is illegal, so I rather wouldn't want to. Plus, with all the bugs and snakes around, I would need to make a raised shelter and have screening. I had some that fit around my head and fit under my hat pretty good too. Hopefully, you don't have to be homeless. Well, unless you want to, but then you have issues like food, water, dry place to sleep, animals, hunters, people attacking you, etc. Daytime, just be a regular person. Go to work, walk around the city, chill on your laptop at McDonald's or Wendy's with free Wi-Fi, libraries, parks, chill with friends. At night, you have to hide and sleep. This was the challenge. I slept in my car a lot, in the employees' parking areas of 24-hour stores. Less foot traffic and cops expect cars to be there all night. Plus, if you want a midnight snack or bathroom break, the store has them. Gotta love Walmart. Also, I'd sleep on the floor in my office at my university. Research assistant throughout undergrad. Again, free Wi-Fi, outlets, safety, bathrooms, and free water and tea. I volunteered a lot back then, in large part for places to go. I volunteered at a large urban hospital in a couple departments and got a bunch of department-specific waiting room door codes that I'd use to sleep. Wi-Fi, safety, quiet. One of my volunteer gigs was on a hotline. For that one, I got keys to a private bedroom in the hospital with a fully stocked mini-fridge, snack basket, meal cards, free parking, bookshelf, TV, 2 twin beds, and a beautiful view. I had to return the key at the end of every shift, though. Damn, this guy was on the grind, not even for money, but a place to rest his weary little head. I was homeless for about a month earlier this year, lucky enough to have a truck with a bed cap and an old futon mattress in the bed. During the day I worked. I had a decent, easy minimum wage job working as a lift operator at a local ski hill. Made enough to afford food, gas, and a gym membership. Shout out Anytime Fitness for being open 24 hours and having internet, while still having a little bit at the end of the day. If I wasn't working, I'd be at the gym working out or downloading some podcasts to listen to later. I pursued anything that was cheap, which would pass a good amount of time. I was pretty lucky. I chose to be homeless because the people I was renting a room from were growing increasingly unstable, and I was going to leave my job at the end of the season and move across the country anyways. I was also friends with a really great couple who often insisted I sleep on their couch. Definitely not the worst story you'll hear, but it was my brush with the phenomenon. I'd sleep in my car in the parking lot at my law school because my classes started at 8 a.m. After class, I'd go to work at one of my 3 jobs. 2 of which were bar and restaurant serving jobs, so that's where I'd get my meal for the day. After my night shift, I'd use a friend's guest pass at the gym to shower and get ready for the next day. Then I'd drive back to the school parking lot and knock out in my back seat. I did my makeup in the car in the morning before classes, so I made sure my appearance really never gave away that I was homeless. I did laundry at the laundromat sometimes, but I typically cycled through the same 3 to 4 outfits throughout the week. But yeah, the routine was always the same for the most part. It really depended on the job I was working, the time of year, and the weather. I was pretty steadily employed, but my shifts ranged from early morning to late at night, so my schedule wasn't always predictable. This meant that some days I would be at work, and other days, if it was warm, I'd try to sleep outside in one of the local parks or nature areas. I tried to fit in as much sleep as possible during the daylight hours because it was less cold and infinitely less scary when sleeping outside. It also wasn't really odd to see people napping or lounging about in the parks, so I didn't stand out much. I was in a college town at the time, and the park areas were always full of students in various states of undress and repose. If it was raining or wintry, I would either spend my days trying to stay warm in a cafe somewhere or hiding in a tiny water heater closet in the basement of one particular apartment building. The front door lock was busted. Weirdly enough, the water heater closet also had a sink and toilet in it. That's where I would do most of my cleaning up and grooming. Was homeless at around 17 for a while. Was lucky enough to sleep in a youth hostel at night, but we had to leave around 8 a.m. and return at 9 p.m. It was winter. A few of us homeless teens would hang around the library for the warmth and the computers. We would shoplift, we would beg, not panhandle, but asking random people if they had a spare quid for the bus. And we would buy pizza and share it. Sometimes bottles of cheap cider if we had enough money or were brave enough to steal alcohol from a store. I used to shoplift new underwear and the shirts and socks a lot. I justified it by telling myself that these were multi-million-pound companies who wouldn't miss a skirt or the shirt here and there and a bit of makeup now and again. I never steal now. It was so boring being homeless. That was all there was for us to do, shoplift and drink. We made a big igloo once and got drunk in that. That was pretty fun. We hung around the town every day with nowhere else to go. The museum staff knew us all by name and didn't like us very much, although we didn't do anything wrong there. I spent a lot of my time in the museum, aquarium, reading books if I wasn't drunk. A lot of the teens I lived with had been in and out of foster care all their lives. I was lucky. I was homeless due to being out of control and my parents being unable to cope with me. I don't blame them, to be honest. Undiagnosed ADHD and ODD can cause somebody to become extremely rebellious and often addicted to illegal substances. I'm a lot better now, and my relationship with my family is amazing. Good for you. Get bus tokens from shelter, eat breakfast, then to the transit authority to attempt exchanging bus tokens for cash by asking to buy people's light rail tickets and getting the dollar they were going to use. We just hop the train anyway. Apply at jobs, interview if I had one, library for online applications and reading, escapism, get lunch with the money collected from bus tokens, probably meet up with the homeless people I knew to see if anything exciting happened to them, or go back to the shelter for dinner. Hop train to downtown, there are pianos scattered throughout the downtown, none in tune really, but well decorated. Some kind of art thing from the university, play piano for money, go back to the shelter to see if there's enough beds. We went on sort of a GBP system. If there was overflow, girls get priority. If you're sleeping outside, see if you can get a blanket and go to hidden spots we mapped out where there are no lawn sprinkler alarm clocks. Back in summer of 2009, my family and I got evicted from our ranch property. We took a couple of our dogs with us, and for a couple nights, we had to sleep in a cramped car with them. Later on, we got vouchers to stay in an extended stay hotel, and I lived there for about 4.5 months until I moved out into a group home and the rest of the family moved into a house. My mother passed away during the homeless period, though. Jeez Louise, that must have been so stressful to deal with on top of the homelessness. Your mom? Man, I'm sorry. Job interviews when I wasn't working on a couple of part-time jobs. If I wasn't doing either of those, I was filling out applications for jobs or just mucking about on my laptop at a Barnes & Noble's. I was homeless in the summer until that winter, but for the most part, it actually wasn't really that bad. I slept in my car at night in the lot of a Walmart until they told me they didn't want me there anymore. Finding a new one was a pain. The holidays sucked, Thanksgiving, Christmas, because my family knew I was in that situation, but no one even offered to have me visit. Not that I would have, and they wondered why I do everything I can not to talk to them now. I did not have it nearly as rough as some. I was working, so I was covered 5 days a week. On the days off, I had a car that I slept in at night. On days off, I suppose I looked for a place to live or found some friends and hung out. It was a long time ago. I was a homeless teen at age 14 when my mom kicked me out of the house for a trivial disagreement. She was a loony at the time. I had no friends I could count on at the time because it was busy and didn't want to bother them. I thought I would get to come back home after a day or so. Days became weeks, then months. It wasn't until my brother, who saw me underneath a freeway overpass, hunkered down with a Mexican family as he drove by, stopped to take me into his place. So my day started out with just walking towards downtown. I was about 15 miles away and had a good general sense of direction. The churches would offer shelter, and there was some good Samaritan houses that offer teens shelter with a stipulation of having to listen to sermons every day and study the Bible. I got tired of that real fast and left those as quickly as I came. You couldn't stay within downtown unless you were near the homeless shelter. There was also an unlawful homeless tent city on an abandoned lot nearby where families would set up, but you had to get out quickly if the cops or ICE showed up. I went to an inner-city school. None of them knew I was homeless. I kept to myself and kept my whereabouts to myself. There were other teens who were homeless too. They all hung out near the railroad underpass. We got by on whatever food we could get that was free at the school cafeteria. That would be our only meal for the day. You quickly learn that even as a teenager or a child, people from the outside don't care about you or treat you the same way as a common criminal. Normal people have busy schedules and gotta keep up, so they don't bat an eye when they see a kid underneath an overpass. I probably saw up to 1,000+ cars every rush hour. It's the constant drone of cars going by and realizing you're even more alone. Luckily, my brother, who I haven't seen in many years because he moved out due to my mom's craziness, saw me and offered me a ride home. I told him no because Mom kicked me out and he understood why. So he offered me a place to stay at his place in the suburbs. I'm married now and have a good job. I did settle with a GED and then piled on a bunch of IT certifications. Last time I went to Texas and passed underneath the same overpass, there are still families in tent encampments scattered outside of downtown Fort Worth. Some within view, some hidden. Well, speaking from a perspective that most people will easily recognize, my homelessness has everything to do with substance abuse. Everybody that you see panhandling outside on a street corner, that's what's up. A much larger percentage of homeless people aren't doing that because their homelessness is a critical problem that they're scrambling to fix. They're working jobs and staying in shelters or cars. I can't speak for that lifestyle because I didn't live it, but think the normal answer is working their butts off in the worst jobs the economy's offering. But for me, during the day and during the night, I went where the action was because I was trying to stay wasted. If there was no action, I'd ask for spare change. I've got to say, I'm surprised that you aren't asking about where to crash, which is the much harder part. I was young and part of a scene, so couches and sometimes squats were generally my objective. About a dozen times I slept rough outside. It sucked, but not as much as being sober and with my family. I thought then. For some of the older guys I'd run with, middle-aged dudes mostly, who weren't part of any kind of scene, they mostly had usual spots that they'd post up on and claim as theirs. Loading docks, warm grates, anything sheltered with a heat source is optimal, but hidden is best. Man, this is making me depressed. I spent Thanksgiving, Christmas, and my birthday in a shelter. I was robbed twice, got food poisoning twice from the shelter food, and came pretty damn close to committing self-deletion, to the point where the knife was at my wrist and the voices were saying it would only hurt for a moment and then I would be at peace and with my mother again. But through all of that, I'm still here, I'm married, and I have a 4-year-old little girl, and while I will do everything in my power to make sure the same never happens to her, I feel confident in saying that through all of that bad and darkness, I am still standing, I'm still here, and I am who I am today because of what I had to do to survive. Current homeless. During the days I work at the local food bank for my city. Currently trying to enlist in the army because it's frickin' miserable out here, and I want to really do something with my life. Even in the shelters, it's just depressing. Other than that, I found a pretty decent shelter, and at night and on weekends, I read a ridiculous amount and work out. But as someone else said, the days are gravy and the nights are what you have to worry. Well, I was a late teen, young adult when I was homeless, and I lost my identification early on, so most of what I did during the day was scrambling to find a new place to lay my head that night, or try and beg and borrow enough money to buy a pack of smokes, bus fare, backup sleeping spot, coffee coffee money. When I gave myself downtime or when I already knew that sleep and food and cigs were taken care of for the day, I'd go to the library, fart around on the free internet, read a book, hang out with other homeless people in the area, and yeah, a bunch of us would do whatever illegal substances we could get for a reasonable price. i.e. under $10 for 2 people usually, so don't worry, it was mostly pot. Getting high was an easy escape, and worth it at twice the price if us poor dudes had it on us. Day or night, unless I had to be indoors to have a safe place to sleep, that was pretty much the routine. Walk around to keep yourself warm on cold days, stand or sit down on warm ones, sing a cappella in the parking garage stairway, entertain yourself to distract you from the bottomless pit your life is right now. Buy coffee at a 24-hour greasy spoon and stay inside, sitting down for as long as they'll let you. Sometimes if I was sleepy and it was dry and warm outside, I'd sleep in a park with the sun beating on my back. Best feeling in the world. I was lucky enough to be homeless in a major urban center, with a lot of resources and a generally caring public, even if most couldn't look me in the eyes. My experience was overall more positive than negative, even if it did suck sleeping on cobblestone sometimes, or feeling your feet slowly congeal or rot from 34 degrees Fahrenheit rain soaking through your worn soles and nowhere to change your socks. That last bit right there, that's the struggle. The wet socks. I couldn't deal with it. No, I'm joking. This is all awful. I was homeless my junior year of college when I got laid off from my internship, which was supposed to be 1 year but only lasted 3 months, and didn't have time to find student housing. My significant other told me I could stay at their place, but conveniently forgot to tell their roommates this. It was hell, and so I only went there once or twice a week. I spent all my time on campus, worked 2 part-time jobs through the school and 1 part-time job remotely. Told everyone I was trying out no shampoo to be more environmentally friendly. It was fall, so I slept in my car most nights somewhere on campus. Never got bothered by campo, but sometimes other students would see me sleeping and bang on the windows of the car to wake me up, which scared the bejesus out of me every time. My friend has been homeless in the Seattle area for 2 of the last 3 years. He goes to the public library during the day after it closes. He normally will go stay in his car until later in the evening. He then goes to the gym at about midnight to work out and shower or clean clothes, etc. I know several people have mentioned it, but I knew I was onto something with the gym membership, especially Anytime Fitness. I go to Anytime Fitness. I went to work during the day. My mom died suddenly and it hit my dad hard. He basically lost it. He was married to another woman who I had met once. 6 months later, he moved to another state and heavily implied that I couldn't go with him. I had a job here anyways. I had to sleep in my car for about 2 weeks during March in New England, which was cold as hell. Luckily, I work at a university, so I could shower and such there. My best friend's dad found out and insisted that I stay with him. He really helped me out. I was with him on his couch for 4 months before I got myself a studio apartment. Okay, this one gives me hope. See, I guess the real answer to being homeless is, as long as you have good friends and, a good work ethic, maybe you can pull yourself out of that hole. I was working in a job that provided housing as part of your payment. In that field, it's kind of an expectation that either they pay you enough to cover housing or they give you a place to stay for the time of your contract. My boss was a flake with an anger problem who refused to take responsibility for himself or his actions. In this setup, there were 3 apartments above this over a dentist office, which the landlord worked in. He came barging into my coworker's apartment next to mine at 7 a.m. when he was sleeping, demanding us to pay rent or get out. Turns out, my boss hadn't paid rent for 15 months to this guy and had been dodging his calls and visits. We, as the subletters, had no idea our rent wasn't being paid. We had 1 week to get out all of our stuff and the company's furniture. We got everything into storage and placed all our personal belongings in our cars. My coworker knew some friends that he stayed with, but I had nowhere to go. For a month while my boss tried to find a new place for us to have as company housing, I lived in my car, went to my first job as a before-school care teacher, went to McDonald's for breakfast, went to work at the Shafty place, went to the little dive bar for a cheap dinner and stayed till close to go back to my car. This whole situation was a wake-up call that I needed to not just find a new job, but a new career. I left and I'm very happy to say that with the help of friends, I don't have the fear of losing my job and my house just because my boss sucks. You know what? It's a serious situation. It's real life. I understand you can't dedicate yourself to this, but I'm really surprised that your first priority was not revenge. I happened to find an office building that I could blend into well enough. I was still able to shower, etc., and used my savings to look after basic needs. I got inspiration from the building that my mom used to work in. It seemed all high security until you went up a couple floors in the elevator. After that, no security at all, and I had access to the Wi-Fi, kitchen, food, bathrooms. It's super easy to blend in if you look like you know what you're doing. I was homeless a few days ago in London, all of last week actually, and have been many times since I was 16. 23 now, but I don't look it. I have an iPhone, nice clothes, a nice bag, just had nowhere to go. Good places to go. Heathrow Airport to get some sleep with everyone else who's waiting for a flight. 24-hour Mackie D's just to chill on Reddit. Parks, if they're open. Hyde Park in central London never closes, but they can be scary at night, so I make sure to have something on me to defend myself. Late night arcades, ask a driver to let you on and ride buses until morning. It's warmer and safer than outside. Go to a bar, people ask you to chill with them and buy you drinks. I don't do this, but I've been offered a lot, so I know it works. I hope I help someone. It's cold and snowing right now. I'm on the way to the first day of my new job now. Hopefully won't lose my house ever again. I didn't consider myself homeless even though I technically was. My boyfriend at the time and I broke into an old industrial building in Brooklyn and squatted in it for about 6 months, which is eons by squatters' standards. He'd found these pieces of foam material which we put on the floor, and then we stuffed some black plastic bags full of our unseasonal clothes and laid that on top of the foam stuff to be our mattress. We accumulated some random other pieces of stuff that had been put out on the street for trash pickup. I remember we found this metal chest that we used as a fridge. We got Wi-Fi because, I kid you not, my then boyfriend overheard this neighbor lady walking her dog next to our window, and she was calling the dog Bingo. He checked the networks on his laptop and tried a few passwords using the dog's name and hit on the one that had Bingo 123 as the password. The hardest part was bathing. No tub or shower. I bathed out of a bucket the entire time. Also, we were there in the winter, December, late April, so it was cold. I remember my boyfriend would wake up and climb out from under the blankets, and I'd start howling because I was freezing without his body heat. Like quite a lot of other people, I had a job, 2 jobs actually, during this period, so I'd be at work most of the day, but I was much better off than most, because I did have 4 walls and a roof and blankets and food. What is one country that you will never visit again? Egypt. Cairo looks/is a war zone. Turrets on street corners, tanks, soldiers with automatic weapons everywhere. We had an armed police officer on the tour bus, Rhodes Scholar, and nothing against them. They are a great company to travel with. A police escort everywhere. Bomb dogs, a guy with a mirror looking under the bus for bombs. Cairo is dirty, littered, and the poverty is staggering. The food was meh at best as we could not travel outside the hotel or tour path to eat. It was blisteringly hot. The camel guys at the pyramids were mean to all of the women and the animals, with children working there as well. The Egyptian Museum was a disgrace to the country. Poorly organized, bad labels, no security, priceless textiles, parchments, leathers, etc., jumbled in cases exposed to the air, heat, hands, no AC. The only thing well cared for and secured were Tutankhamun's artifacts. It's a spectacular resource and collection, and so badly cared for, with no curation. The new one's just opened. I sure hope it's better. Once you've seen one temple, one hieroglyphic, you've truly seen them all. It's all about tourist money, and the street vendors were relentless and scary. Even on a nice open boat ride down the Nile, kids paddled up to the boat on wooden doors selling cheap crap or just begging. Never again. This just reminded me how when I was a kid I had the Mummy on videotape. I watched it relentlessly, and I did not want to go to Egypt ever because I thought the scarab beetles actually crawled under your skin and killed you. No offense, but screw the Bahamas. It's a tourist trap and not a very good one at that. More like a third world country trying to play at capitalism. I'll just put it out there, none of the thoughts on these places are mine. The Gambia in West Africa. I've traveled to over 40 countries in my life, including Egypt, Egypt, Morocco, India, and Cameroon. And the Gambia is by far the worst of the bunch. Went there in 2009 with my girlfriend. We were 20 at the time. It is by far the most corrupt country in the world. Let me start by saying it's a beautiful country, and the people there are the friendliest people you could wish to meet, but the way they are treated by the government is disgusting. We met a local guy there called Jimmy Brave, who lived in a hut on the beach with his young family. Amazing guy, cooked us dinner every night and never wanted anything but friendship in return. We gave him a fair bit of money on our last day, more than we usually would because he genuinely didn't want it. Anyway, one night we decided we wanted to check out the nightlife in the tourist area where it was safe, so my friend Jimmy agreed to meet us by the hotel entrance at 7 p.m. Then we would take him for dinner and hit a few bars. We got to the front of the hotel just before 7 p.m. and Jimmy wasn't there. We waited around an hour, still no Jimmy. At this point, we assumed he had forgot, so we went back to our rear exit onto the beach and to his hut. His wife said he had gone to meet us over an hour ago. We searched for about 4 hours and still couldn't find him, so his wife suggested we call the local tourist police. We called and they confirmed he had been arrested for loitering in front of the hotel. We agreed to meet the head of police and arrived at the police station. This is where it got shady. We went in and sat at a desk in an empty, dark room. A big African guy in army clothing came in and sat in front of us. The guy had 2 cigs in his mouth, smoking both at the same time. He slams his fist on the table and starts shouting at us, demanding £500, probably a year's wage over there, to release Jimmy. Obviously, we refused after about an hour of arguing and various threats against us. We were a young white couple at the time, and they assumed we were wealthy. We managed to agree on £70 and a 200 pack of cigarettes. We paid, and we were told to wait outside. We were out there for over 2 hours, and they brought the wrong guy out. We only knew our friend as Jimmy Brave, not his real name, so this proved challenging. Anyway, I was invited in to show the police who Jimmy was and had to pick him out of a huge cell filled with at least 300 people, some who were very close to death. Anyway, Jimmy spotted me straight away and we had him released. When we go far enough from the police station, Jimmy broke down in tears. I've never seen a grown man cry like this in my life. He lifted up his top and he had several large open wounds where they had been whipping him in the cell and the police truck. We immediately took him to the hospital where he remained for 2 days at a cost of £240-ish. The hospital doctors were great. So, bear in mind he was beaten, whipped around 50 times, hard, just for waiting outside our hotel to take us for drinks. And he was only released because we paid. If we had never turned up, he said he would have died in there. They don't release the criminals until somebody pays the corrupt police chief. There were literally people dying in front of my eyes in the cell. I've always swore if I became rich, I will be going back there just to release as many of these people as I possibly can, except any dangerous people who actually deserve to be there, obviously. This wasn't the only corruption from the police we saw while there. It's just the main point. We see police walking down the streets slapping women and kids for absolutely no reason. One cop told me he would murder anyone I point out right now for £50. He had an AK. I saw people dragged in the back of trucks, never to be seen again, just for asking people for a bottle of water. I feel really sorry for the majority of people in the Senegambia, as they are amazing, happy people who have to live in constant fear of the police and government. I should say, Jimmy managed to move to the UK in 2016 with the help of me and another British family he met in Gambia. He now lives in Stoke-on-Trent, which is a few hours from where I live, but we talk on Facebook regularly and meet up once or twice a year. Haiti went on a medical mission. One day was spent at the beach. We got caught in the middle of a protest. I was groped. Several other people were punched. It was terrifying. They only stopped when one of our translators yelled that we were medical workers. We only ended up spending 1 hour at the beach so we wouldn't end up driving back through the same area at night. When we reached that area, it was clear of people. A few overturned vehicles were on fire. A UN detail was hanging out in a big armored vehicle with a very large gun on top. I can't can't imagine how bad it is now with all of the civil unrest. As of current year and my understanding of the geopolitical and situation that is taking place in Haiti, it has gotten significantly worse. Jamaica. Went for a chill vacation with my then college girlfriend and were very turned off by being asked if we wanted to buy weed every 20 steps. Despite popular misconceptions, weed was quite illegal in Jamaica at the time. I smoked at home in the US occasionally, but wasn't into it this trip and didn't want to risk getting arrested in a foreign country. 3 days in and they're wearing us down, so we consider buying a joint. That same day, a tour guide on our river tour warns us without prompting that dudes will sell you weed and then cross the street to tell the cops for an informant fee that you've got weed, after which you get tossed in Jamaican jail and have to bribe your way out. Also, the food was meh. Japan. I'm fat, black, and none too cute. Older people spit at me, no one would sit next to me on the train or would make it painfully obvious they were uncomfortable during rush hours. Young people, adults, teens, older kids had no filter and would happily laugh at me, make faces, or even throw things at me, though that was only in Shibuya. It was hard for me to get work as a teacher, even with my training and credentials, because I had to have my picture and no one wanted a black and ugly teacher. I felt like a monster the entire time and slowly shut myself away until I had quit my jobs and only left at night to get food from a convenience store. The last time I went outside during the day in Japan, I was going to cancel my cell phone plan before I left. And there, kids and teens pointed and laughed before running away screaming I was a monster. I was mortified when the adults looked at me and I could hear them go, "Well, look at her." It took me 4 months back home to leave my apartment during the day in the States. I didn't go thinking I'd be loved, just thought I'd have a nice experience in my 20s. Japan is a modern, beautiful country with wonderful people, but I just didn't get lucky enough to meet them. My pet peeve is when I mention this. People go, "Oh, Japan was great to me. You must have done something wrong." I'm glad you had a good time. I hope the next person has a great time too. But this happened to be my experience. That's all. Dubai. While interesting, it's really just a total rip-off of Western culture. I flew 12 hours from New York City only to be surrounded by Cheesecake Factory, Wendy's, California Pizza Kitchen, etc. No real culture. Isn't Dubai like a relatively new city by age standards? It's like decades old. I know that the original Dubai was like a fishing village or some crap, I think. But then obviously they modernized and now they're like one of the wonders of the world apparently, that loads of people love to visit as tourists. Cambodia, but only because I was mugged in Phnom Penh. Well, it's a holiday in Cambodia. It's tough, kid, but it's life. It's a holiday in Cambodia. Don't forget to pack a wife. I apologize. I heard Cambodia and I went, yeah, dead Kennedys. Venezuela. I visited my extended family there near Caracas as a young child and had an amazing time. But things there have really gone south since then. Pretty much all my family members that were there have left for obvious reasons. China. I had to go there a couple of times for work, but the feeling of being surveilled, the pollution, the horrible pedestrian experience, and getting scammed by a cabbie turned me off. Thailand. Went there during the coup in 2013. Got stuck. Too much prostitution and child smut and prostitution out in the open for me. Also, being there during the coup and getting a crazy flu and hospitalized in Bangkok frickin' sucked. Love my Thai friends, but Bangkok and Pattaya are just too crazy for me. Singapore. Great company and friendly people, except on the first day I was in a sports bar, beaten up. My assaulter was a man, which I later learned was the boyfriend to a woman I asked to dance. Sucker punched and went to the floor immediately. Getting kicked, people intervened after what felt like a minute when he picked up a chair to continue. That per se would not have been a reason not to visit it anymore, it's what followed. The bartender told me I should leave ASAP and sleep it off. After multiple hits against the head, or he will get the police involved and tell them I started the fight. Since I suspected a concussion, I called 911. I fled the bar and called 911 on the streets. There, the bartender or manager followed me with 2 big employees of his and tried to get me with slight force in his back office to talk so I don't ruin my life and that of my family in a lawsuit. I actually had to shout on a full street something silly like, "Emergency, help, help," multiple times at some point so he and his men would leave me alone. It was clearly meant as imposing, and I am very thankful I didn't follow him in his office with his 2 strongmen. Eventually, the ambulance came. I got first aid and made my statement, while I heavily tried to get any information off the police and visited them and my embassy multiple times. There, I noticed they had no interest in following my case. There were multiple security cameras, a bar, and a street full of witnesses in a lively and well-esteemed shopping/entertainment area. Just no interest of the police to get bad reputation for their city-state, I suppose. Singapore has a very low crime rate, but I'm quite sure my attack never showed up in any statistic whatsoever. Emails and follow-ups by myself, insurance, and my local police were ignored, just dead silent, and condolence from my embassy. Still have minor sight issues on my left eye and very minor headaches after 4 years. Yeah, let this be a reminder, or maybe even a note to people who don't know, but one bad hit in the head can really mess up or just completely ruin someone's life. Which is why one-hit KO challenges are stupid and cruel, and you're a dirtbag if you do them. UAE, Dubai frickin' sucks. Built on slavery, arrogant, money, and power-drunk locals. If you're a chick without a man nearby, the men aggressively flirt. Read the Gulf News if you want to see horror stories of how they treat migrant workers. You couldn't pay me to live in that overblown crap hole of big, empty buildings. Afghanistan. I would love to go back and be a tourist, but I don't think I will ever have the opportunity, nor would it be responsible now that I have a family to vacation there. The country is absolutely beautiful, and the weather was nice. The people are one of the kindest, most respectful cultures I have ever had the pleasure of working with, full of beautiful traditions and fantastic food. Sadly, they have their issues, and it wouldn't be wise to risk going there as a tourist. A real shame too, because I'd love to visit the resorts in Bamiyan and go skiing and snowboarding there too. Qatar. I worked there for 15 months. Appalling treatment of workers. Very, very hot. Terrible food, and the whole country is a building site getting ready for the World Cup next year. After that, the country will be empty. Nothing to do apart from work and shopping. Iran. I'm half Iranian, but I was born and raised in Europe. I went a few times between 10 and 13 years old, and the last time I went, I started feeling the weight of being a woman. I was hanging out with my aunt in the capital. I turned my head around and my scarf fell off. I had full sleeve coverage in the middle of the summer. Immediately, the moral police circled us and asked why my head was uncovered. My aunt told them off, but that really stayed with me. It was over 15 years ago, and I can't imagine my grown adult self fearing the police because my headscarf won't stay in place. I do miss my family, and I have amazing memories of visiting the historical sites, but I refuse to suppress my womanhood and self in order to be there. Australia. As an American, I was made to feel unwelcome on a daily and hourly basis. And I'm a worldly American who never had problems with anyone, even Parisians. I was there for 2 months and was subjected to things like being called a seppo, which is extremely insulting and rude. Hardly a day went by where I didn't hear that word. And when you take exception to it, they gaslight you like you're too uptight and you can't take a joke and you're the problem. And I got made fun of for holding my utensils a certain way while eating. People down there, I found, were rubes with no manners. Add to the daily generalized ignorant questions, why do all Americans, or you frickin' Americans? Someone actually asked me, why do all Americans' phone numbers start with 555? I am not making that up. Then you turn on the news or a talk show and listen to more snide remarks. It doesn't strike me as a good deal to spend all that money to be subjected to unprovoked hostility on a daily basis. I would not recommend that any American go down there. See, I for one am most definitely going to Australia one day. I have wanted to ever since I played goddamn the Tasmanian Tiger on PlayStation 2. Actually, the more I think about it, I did just have a general fascination with Australia as a kid. Anyway, if anything, let this story be a lesson that no matter who you are and where you go, there is always somewhere where you can be discriminated against. I flew into Germany on my way to Denmark and had a 6-hour wait at the Frankfurt train station before catching my bus to Copenhagen. I don't know if it was just the particular area of Frankfurt I was in, but it was mad depressing. The number of homeless people made San Francisco go look good, and so many of them were harassing me for money and clearly suffering from illegal substance addiction. A woman followed me for 4 blocks trying to proposition me to pay her $20. Didn't see any food that looked appetizing. People were very cold and unfriendly, and the music was corny beyond belief. Germany's another place I'd like to visit, but it's mostly because I heard they have like the biggest indoor water park in the world, and it looked awesome. China. I made the mistake of going to Shanghai while being of Polynesian descent and was really taken aback by the open racism. I had my hair pulled. Some businesses wouldn't serve me if I went without a Chinese person, and people looked at me like I was disgusting. It ruined many a picture. Comments were also made. I really thought that Shanghai would be okay because it's such an international city, but damn was I mistaken. America. Don't feel like I really have a reason to return, and everything just feels too big to me. Don't have family there, thought it was grand and can see why some people love visiting, but just not my cuppa, especially in the summer. Meanwhile, I'd love to go back to Italy again, but go further north this time. Yeah, I can definitely see why people would have that impression of America for sure. Narnia. Went with some siblings. My younger brother hit it off with an older woman, but she turned out being a real female dog, ruining the trip for everyone. Also, the animals talked. 3 out of 10. Yeah, I know that one's not for real. I just thought it was kind of funny. I hope that I never have to go back to Jordan. I am a 60-year-old woman and was traveling with another woman my age about 4 years ago. We were so excited to see Petra and to learn about the culture. Instead, we had more than one sexist male tour guide who was verbally anti-Western and Europe. Okay, I can understand politics for sure. However, we, American and Europeans, according to one guide, are responsible for men turning gay, and that Jordanian men were never gay until they saw such things on American and European television. Oh, another one? We're filthy because we have dogs in our houses. Yet another said that he'd never let his wife wear makeup. We wear makeup and we were traveling, just 2 gal pals. Anyway, the food sucks. Their national dish is some slop called mansaf. It tastes like a sheep died of old age and was then slow boiled in poor quality yogurt for 2 days. I then met up with some very cool Palestinians in Hebron after that. They invited me to lunch at their home, and I was shocked at the delicious food. I told them that I just came from Jordan, and they laughed and said that they all agreed that Jordanian food is garbage. I don't know, I'm looking at the mansaf. It looks alright. It looks like it could be nice. It's not the most appealing thing, but I like the bed of rice it's on. Not a country, but just one city. Malmö. I spent about 1.5 months in Sweden a few years ago and visited many cities and loved every minute of that trip. However, something about Malmö made me feel uneasy. I felt like I was in a dystopian novel in which everyone said we were in Sweden, but it did not feel like Sweden. Brazil. This won't be a popular response, I suppose, but it is based on my personal experience. After a month of being warned that we could be robbed on the bus, the street, killed on the beach, etc., I ended my time there, held hostage by 2 escaped criminals. That's enough for me. I did not enjoy my stay in Morocco. We went during Ramadan and had rocks thrown at us and people following us down the street yelling at us. We also couldn't be seen eating by anyone or we would get the nastiest looks ever. No intention of ever going back. I personally have no intention of and don't really understand why other people go to countries that are so controlled and influenced by religion. They are quite frankly usually the most miserable places in the goddamn world. India. I'm sure some parts and people are lovely, but my wife got grabbed so much in front of me without any concern that it ruined it for us. India is another place I would definitely like to visit one day. Mostly because I frickin' love Indian food, but also because, it's a pretty goddamn beautiful place. Las Vegas. For me, very overrated. Hotels are very similar, expensive, same food in each hotel and casino. Too hot in the day, so busy at night. TV has definitely glamorized it. What's the most messed up thing a friend has ever done to you? I used to chat to this guy online for over a year on Skype, 4 or 5 nights a week. Anywhere from 3 to 5 hours a time. Definitely lots in common. Really sweet guy. I would have done this anyway, but I started crushing on him. I know he cared about me a lot too, but then one day about 2 years ago, he deleted his Facebook and stopped coming on to Skype or the original website we had met on. on. Not a word. Didn't answer any texts or emails. I continued to send him the odd text message, happy birthday, Xmas, etc. I finally heard back from them during this summer that he had been spending far too much time online and had to cut it out completely. Couldn't have told me this earlier? I was worried that he had been maybe in an accident or something because the silence was very unusual from this guy. I still care about him a lot, but I haven't really thought about him much recently. He was super awesome and we were on the same wavelength. I thought it was really cool that he understood what I was trying to say when I was having difficulty expressing myself and loved pop culture as much as I did. No doubt when an internet friend just disappears one day, it totally sucks, sure, but I think as I've gotten older, I'm kind of like, yeah, people have their own lives, priorities, things change, and granted, yes, they could have totally told you that they were just getting off the internet, but at the end of the day, some people need to make drastic changes in order to actualize real change. One of my best friends, and one of the first people to be nice to me, said he loved me. Then he spent a whole lot of time with me. I thought things were going great. I started to feel the same. He asked if we could take it further. I was a virgin at the time and very self-conscious about my body. Well, after maybe an hour of him cuddling and such, we do the deed. After that, he made me dinner. It all seemed like a really good thing. Next day, he completely ignores me. It took me about 3 months to get him to even text me back, and the only reason he did was because he wanted his best friend's advice on how to get a girl that he wanted to smash. I helped, and I really have no idea why. It hurts to see them together, and he makes eye contact with me while he hugs and kisses her. Then, whenever we're alone, he tells me how beautiful I am, how special I am. But as soon as someone else walks into the room, he makes fun of me, and it hurts. I told him that, and he called me terrible things. I haven't talked to him for almost 2 months. I'd like to put this more tactfully, but your best friend is a user of literally the worst possible degree. One of my best friends borrowed $3,000 from me. I was a single mom going through cancer treatments. He took the money and never paid me back. He told me he loved me and he wanted to elope. When I said no, he was crazy and I want my money. He told me he wished cancer could destroy my body and I died. We dated in 6th grade. I was so completely in love with him up until he never paid me back. He used my crush to his advantage. Oh, let's not forget, he had my mom arrested 3 times in a week when I was in 8th grade, then told the entire school about my personal life, but my mom kinda deserved to get arrested. Needless to say, after 17 years of friendship, I could care less about him. In 6th grade, I had this friend, let's call him Brad. We met in block class and started to hang out at lunch and play Halo 3 on Xbox Live every day after school. Brad was the kind of kid who would call you gay if you didn't like something he liked, or did something he thought was stupid. I don't know why, but he always focused on me for that sort of stuff. So fast forward towards the end of 6th grade in our PE class, we were all waiting in the locker room to get dismissed into the gym for class, when one of our friends started to have people sign the back of his PE shirt. Since it was the end of the year and we didn't get our yearbooks yet, we all followed suit. I finally let Brad sign the back of my shirt since it was the back of my shirt. I couldn't see what he was writing. When everyone saw what he had written, Brad started to chant it throughout the locker room. 10 kin likes men, 10 kin likes men. I'm not gay, nor do I have any problem with gay people. I started to spin around in embarrassment, confusion, watching as everyone in the locker room pointed and laughed at me. Then out of nowhere, my friend Keenan grabs me and pulls me into the locker room office to tell our teacher, whom is a great guy and used to teach with my mom, what Brad did. Anyway, he had to call his mom and tell her what he had done. I don't know why, but I was still friends with him until the end of 7th grade. Then in 7th grade, we went on a field trip and my mom and Brad's mom both volunteered to help out. They ended up sitting next to each other on the bus and my mom had brought up what Brad did to me. I overheard Brad's mom explain that when he called her into the office, he was crying uncontrollably. It must have been so awkward for the mother of the kid who practically gay bashed me to sit next to and explain to my mother what her son did. The worst thing I can think of is one friend that stands me up about 40% of the time. It's weird. When I see him, he's a really good friend. But when we make plans to hang out on a certain day, I'll call but won't hear from him for days. When I finally reach him, he'll say something like, Oh, I had to go to something with my brother, etc. Not sure what to do. I legitimately don't think I'd be able to tolerate that. I would be like insisting to them, hey, if you got something else going on, I don't mind. You just gotta tell me so that I don't get my hopes up that I'm gonna have a nice day out with my friend and then bubkiss. The only solution I'd see is to confront them about the fact that they clearly don't respect your time. I had a friend at university who was always looking for bits of money or to buy him food as he was starving, etc. I even listened to his stories of how he'd make the best video game ever when he graduated, showing me page after page of designs he had done, all looking straight copies of other games. Me being a regular good guy Greg felt sorry for him, so coughed up cash that I was working my butt off for whilst I was studying as well, all while he'd lay about doing bugger all. I thought he was just a bit odd, but in time he'd mature, mellow out. I was quite wrong. Come the group work, he stole the rest's work, tried to pass it off as his own, claimed we were just all jealous, etc., and how he'd done all the work. In reality, none. That, and he never paid me back a penny of the cash I loaned him. Thankfully, he crashed and burned and I believed effed off on some trip to try and discover himself. Back in middle school, a friend spilled water on my crotch area of my pants. I was wearing khaki pants and it was in school, so it was pretty visible. Instead of helping me by fetching me some paper towels, my friend started laughing his butt off pointing at my crotch, getting enough attention for everybody in the class around there to stare and laugh at me. I got really embarrassed, and now I realize that the biggest mistake on my part was not playing it cool. I haven't spoken to that friend since. Not only do I agree you should have played it cool, but also, this is definitely on the lower tier of things that a friend could have done to you. I lived with a girl who was my roommate in Jobs Corps. If you don't know what that is, Google it. I don't feel like explaining. After we left there, she had a 2-bedroom apartment and the rent was cheap, so I moved in with her. Being that we had been roommates before and I knew she was cool, I didn't think we'd have problems. Wrong. After 2 weeks, I had a full-time job and was contributing to food and bills, not to mention alcohol. She and her boyfriend drank a lot. No one complained about anything I did. I never left a mess, never locked them out or anything of the sort, so I don't think I was doing anything wrong. About 2 weeks after I started working, things go weird. I had become friends with some of her friends, including her brother. Somehow, she decided to tell them I had every STD possible. Not true, and that I slept with any guy who hit on me. Also not true. Said friend and the guy I was interested in never spoke to me again. I didn't find out why until way later, but I noticed at the time that they all just started ignoring me. She started locking me out of the house while she was home, throwing the deadbolt and the chain on. I knew she was home because I could frickin' hear her giggling at my frustration. I'd be asking her nicely to open the door, at least let me get some clothes for the night if she wanted some alone time with her boyfriend, and she would either ignore me or yell rude things back through the door. After this started, I couldn't be in the house without feeling uncomfortable. Constant passive-aggressive behavior. Her and her boyfriend sitting on the couch mumbling things about me loud enough so that I could hear it when in the kitchen. Her boyfriend even threatened me repeatedly, which I ignored. He was all talk and I knew it. Blah, blah, blah. The final straw came when I tried to get into the apartment to pick up the majority of my belongings so that I could move into a new place. I had to let her know I was moving, had paid up rent and bills. She seemed fine with the arrangement. She refused to let me in again and threw a bag out into the alleyway with some of my clothes in it and told me never to come back or she would call the cops. Come to find out later, she just stole anything she wanted from my room, bagged up some clothes for me and then threw everything else out. Everything she threw out included my birth certificate, childhood pictures, yearbooks, journals. Oh, and she read the journals out loud to people who knew me and made fun of me the whole time. So basically, I was left with a few changes of clothes and whatever I was carrying in my giant purse of doom. Thankfully, after years of a nomadic lifestyle, I was accustomed to carrying a mini kit of bathroom items and all my makeup in my purse. I was left in a town where I knew only my co-workers and had only known them a few weeks and had virtually no money and no possessions. Some of the things she threw out were pictures of my now deceased grandmother and me when I was a baby, and it breaks my heart that I don't have them anymore. It might not seem that severe, but as a clueless 20-year-old, this seemed like the most awful betrayal ever, especially because I hadn't provoked her at all and definitely did not deserve that. She contacted me years later to apologize, and I did forgive her. I blame her now ex-boyfriend who always hated me, but I would never trust her again. We're just Facebook friends, and occasionally chat on instant messenger. I will never forget that. I'd like to say this is why I don't live with people that I don't know that well, but you literally knew this person and then they decided to do a 180, a massive heel turn, and decide to be the villain of this period of your life, I guess. God damn, what a psycho. I wouldn't even forgive them. I wouldn't associate with them. My friend Rod had sea monkeys that he'd kept alive until they were the size of small tadpoles. He took very good care of them and he was invested in their survival, if not a little attached. I was high and clumsy and knocked it off the dresser. You could see them flitting about on the wall and in the carpet. They all died. I felt like crap. I am the sea monkey Himmler. Sorry, Rod. I had this one friend I knew through middle school to college. One weekend, a lot of my group of friends were going to a convention, so my sister got a hotel room and asked if I had any friends who would like to stay with us for the weekend and pay a small fee. It was one of my sister's friends and a couple of my friends, her included, who took us up on the offer. Everyone else paid up front, but she insisted that she had to get to an ATM to pay. The whole weekend, she basically avoided us and would hang around these two guys she dubbed Boyfriend 1 and Boyfriend 2. That Saturday night, when we were all going back to the hotel together, she decided to run off with some guy with a motorcycle, insisting she's grown. She was 18 at the time, so she wasn't technically wrong, but she sure as hell wasn't acting it, i.e. the not paying what she owed and going off with someone she had met maybe 5 minutes before, and that she'd meet us at the hotel. She ended up knocking on the door an hour and a half later, wanting to get in, waking us all up. Anywho, the next morning, her and my friend go to Waffle House and wanted to spend more money at the convention. She only had to pay us $60, which should have been a priority anyway, but decided buying more junk at the convention was more important. She paid us half of what she owed, which I later found out a large portion of that money came from my other friend, high school students. Now, would someone who's grown be asking for money from high school students? Her bag didn't even pay for her Waffle House. This girl still tries to talk to me and can't take a damn hint. First year of college, my best friend was this kid who lived in my building. We'd play video games, watch Pokemon, get high together, etc. One night while drunk, I cried in his arms and told him I wanted to delete myself. He was supportive and encouraged me to seek help for my depression, which is something I have been struggling with since the age of 9. A few months after this incident, I have begun therapy and I'm feeling good and strong. I started dating a girl who also lives in my building. My best friend begins dating her best friend. It's kind of the perfect scenario. 1 month later, my best friend's girlfriend dumps his butt. No explanation really, just wants nothing to do with him. My girlfriend and I spend a lot of time with him, trying to help him get over her. It's a slow process, but eventually he appears to be doing well. A month or two after this, I become massively depressed again about things going on at home between my parents and our financial situation. When it seems like therapy isn't helping and like I'm consistently making my girlfriend's life terrible by pulling away emotionally, I begin to feel a mixture of guilt and resentment for her inability to be more supportive and less bitter towards me, so I break up with my girlfriend. We're apart for a week, and during this week, I am spending pretty much all of my time with my best friend, telling him about how awful I feel not being with my girlfriend and asking him to tell her I love her. On the 6th day, my therapist helps me see that I don't have the right to make decisions for people about what they're willing to or should have to take. I tell her I still want to be with her and we get back together. Rumors start flying about things that went on between my best friend and my girlfriend during the breakup week, and a few people congratulate me on being a big person for not causing drama after their hookups. I confront the two of them, and they both firmly deny that anything of the sort happened. I believe them. We make the arrangements to live together and with our 5 other friends in a different building on campus for the following school year, and put all of our shared things in storage for the summer. The current school year ends and my girlfriend and best friend leave for the summer. The day my girlfriend leaves, she calls me from the airport and confesses that while we were broken up, she and my best friend got wasted and they hooked up. I tell her I'm not mad about the hookup itself because we were broken up, but I tell her I'm really mad about being lied to and walking around while people felt sorry for me and thought me a fool for trusting people who were apparently lying to me. I tell her all this and hang up on her, then call my best friend and rip him a new one for being dishonest with me. Then my girlfriend calls me back and tells me that the SX wasn't consensual. They were drunk and he forced himself on her. She tells me about how the next day day, and for the next 4 days, they'd go on drives where he would tell her I didn't deserve her, and she should just be with him, and she'd really know true happiness and love. After a week of him dodging my calls and attempts to contact him on the internet, I leave him a voicemail telling him that if he contacts her again, I'll end him. She and I change our housing situation so that we aren't anywhere near him. The next school year begins and I meet up with him to get my things out of the storage unit. He calls me at midnight and tells me he brought all my things in his car and needs to leave, so I need to grab it all pronto. I arrive and find that one of my guitars is broken. At this point, I know if I argue about this, I'll never get home, and odds are he won't pay for the damn thing anyway, so I just leave. For the following 5 months, my girlfriend has nightmares multiple times a week about him. Sometimes in the dark, she hits me in the dark at night because she thinks I'm him. During intimate moments, she'd sometimes have to stop because she couldn't stop thinking about him touching her. It's clear this is really hurting her and our relationship, so I ask her to please go to therapy and at least attempt to create some divide between him and me so that we can get over it together. She never does. Eventually, it becomes too much and we break up for good. Now, they're dating and live together. As far as I know, she never went to therapy or anything of the sort. I did not see that twist at the end coming, not gonna lie. Oh man, I would be, I don't know, I think that'd be a sore spot. I had a very close group of girlfriends who all went to school together and know everything about each other. I was at our monthly girls' night where we drink wine, smoke, gossip, and whatever. I left around midnight to take another girl back home. I realized after dropping her off that I still had half a bottle of wine left there, so I decided to go back. When I got to the house, I could hear that they were out smoking on the porch, so I went around the back. Before I could open the gate, I could hear that they were talking about me. Imagine the closest friends in your life bringing up every flaw in your character and basically talking about what a crappy human you are. I was frozen and ended up sitting in the grass listening to them talk crap about my husband and I for over an hour. So my best friend and I went to LA from Austin just for the hell of it. So the last day there, after we had packed up and everything, we went out to a concert, his choosing, not mine. While we were there, he bumped into his ex-girlfriend, which used him and cheated on him for about 8 months before anyone told him about it. Even I didn't know. I never really met her nor talked to her. I helped him get over her by talking to him and all this other good stuff like a friend should. So anyways, he offers to go buy her a drink and I decide to go to the restroom because I'm not a fan of drinking. There was a line and the wait was like 15 minutes easy. Once I get out, I look for him and the girl for about 30 minutes, calling his phone, asking where he was, but it kept on going straight to voicemail. So after an hour or so, I get worried because I think he left me. My phone eventually runs out of battery and I ask someone if I can use their phone because mine is dead and I can't find my friend. So the people were nice and they let me use it, tried to call him 3 times and still no answer. The people eventually just say, leave him, blah, blah, blah. I explained to them we're coming from Austin and he was the one who had the car and pretty much all of my stuff was in that car. All I had at the time was my license, about $50 and a debit card, but I had just paid my tuition so my money was pretty much gone in that card. I don't know why, but they offered to let me stay in their house and one of them laughed and said he might think we're murderers, and they got me a room at a hotel. I thanked them and all that good stuff, and I got one of their names so that I can repay them. I ended up calling my parents and asking them to put money into my card so I can get a car and drive back. So it turns out that my friend and the girl decided to hook up, have sex, etc., and leave me. I really don't know why, nor do I care anymore, but it just frickin' blew my mind that he would do that over a girl. Again, this is completely unforgivable. Why would you desert your friend in a place that they are not familiar with over some goddamn Wagyu? My best friend of almost 15 years had an affair with my wife. Not only were we great friends, but I helped him get his first IT job. He was having no luck due to a lack of references. I offered him my home when he was homeless for over a month. Horrible decision in hindsight. My wife was just as much at fault, but his betrayal was unexcusable. I ran into him a little over a year ago in a bookstore. I caught eye of him approaching me. Before he could say anything, I told him, walk the F away. He did. That's the last I ever saw of him. I hear he moved up north. Our circles of friends all annexed themselves from him. He really had nobody left or reason to stay in our city. It was a crappy time in my life, but life throws those curveballs once in a while. You have the choice to learn from your mistakes or let it tear you down. I'd like to think it made me a better person in the end. Can't really hold him totally accountable for this one, but my best friend from high school got into some pretty heavy substance abuse in our senior year and then on into his freshman year of college. One night, I got a call from him where in his ridiculous state, he thought it would be funny to describe to me how he was going to intentionally delete himself by ODing on an insane combination of substances. Can't remember what exactly, but it was basically a recipe for a heart attack. Couldn't convince him not to do it. After that, he got counseling, but he's never really been the same person since, and we've more or less stopped talking entirely. It's sad when people get to that state when they're that down about their life or whatever's going on, but I think it's also sad to put people that care about you through that kind of turmoil in telling them that you're going to do something like self-delete yourself rather than speak to your friends and family about it in a healthy way. Tell them you're in a dark place. Tell them that you're having those thoughts and, hopefully they can come to understand and give you the help that you need. What is something that someone said to you that is so stupid you thought they were joking? We were watching the ID channel about a couple of murderers that were executed during the reenactment scenes. Dude next to me says, "That's cool that they let them out of prison to film this." My shift lead at the microbiology lab I work at told me that they believed that dinosaurs didn't ever exist, that they were mythical beasts like unicorns, and it'd be cool if they were ever real, but they weren't, so it's not. She also said that all fossils found are fakes to just get publicity. A girl told me she had to delete some photos off her phone because her phone was feeling too heavy. Same girl thought potatoes grew on trees. That can't be true. If I met someone who said that, I would lose faith in just about everything. Lots of questions from customers in the rafting industry. At what elevation do deer turn to elk? Who puts the rocks in the river? Where are the tracks that lead the boat? As if the Whitewater River trip is at Disneyland and the whole thing is a ride. At the put-in, can't I just leave my things here so they'll be here when we get out? Tons of people think you take out on a river at the same place you pull it. Like it's a circle and the current goes back uphill. School I worked at had a long-term sub in the 8th grade because nobody wanted the position. One day in the lounge, I mentioned how one of her students was really annoying. I'm the art teacher. And she goes, "Oh, that little mentally deficient prick is so annoying. He's trying to learn German too." I didn't respond because she just called a student mentally deficient and also trying to understand why him trying to learn German made him mentally deficient. Then she goes, "Here's what I want to know. German and Japanese, is there a difference?" I stared at her for a while thinking she was making a joke, but she kept waiting for an answer. When I explained German came from Germany and Japanese from Japan, she goes, "Ugh, I don't even get it." That person probably didn't get a lot of things. Every time we used to visit a beach near my grandmother's house in Barbados, my mother used to remind us of a young woman who came up to her and asked her what state she was in because her boyfriend was playing a practical joke on her and telling her they were outside of America, and everyone knows there's nowhere outside of America. I don't want to say all Americans think this, but there does seem to be a trend of Americans thinking that it's sort of the center of the world, and maybe who can blame them? I mean, so much stuff comes from America. I mean, a lot of TV and whatnot. When I was a little kid, I kind of thought I lived in America for a very short period of time because of all the American TV that I was watching, so I just presumed where I live equated to what TV was on. I was very young and super stupid. When someone mentioned that 1 in 3 people get cancer in their lifetime, another friend in the group said that the statistic is crap and that he sees it as 50-50, either you get it or you don't. This dude was studying architecture. Wonder if he thinks the odds of any building falling apart is 50-50 too. That's weirdly something that's been on my mind lately, because I have been wondering, what if I get cancer when I'm older? Will I survive it? Will I be one of the lucky ones? I once had a conversation with a coworker who told me that they wished they lived back in medieval times because it would have been fun to battle orcs and dragons. This was right when Lord of the Rings was coming out in movie form and were very popular. At first, I assumed he was saying he would like to live in the Lord of the Rings universe. After a minute, I had a sudden realization. I came to realize he meant that he thought dragons and orcs and things like that really existed at one time. I, and several of our co-workers, spent the rest of the day and months after trying to convince him that that wasn't the case. He strongly believed that during the dinosaur age, there were also dragons, orcs, trolls, etc., and we were fighting them with swords and knights. And you had to go and crush his naive little idea of how the world was. God damn it, why'd you do it to him? Not me, but a friend. She's from the Philippines, and she legitimately got asked if she lived in the trees when she was there. Okay, this got me wondering if maybe there was a reason they asked that sort of question, because it's like, why would you just ask specifically, oh, you're from the Philippines, so you must live in tree houses or something? So I looked it up. There are some really impressive looking tree house resort type locations that you can stay at there, but I don't know if there's like, I thought maybe he might have seen a documentary where it's like, in this village everyone lives in a tree house. But as far as I can tell, that is not the case. One night after volleyball, we were hanging out at the bars. A mutual friend walks by at a pivotal moment in the conversation. My buddy asks him, "Hey guy, how long does a pregnancy last?" He shrugs, says, I don't know, 18 months. We got a good giggle out of it, and then I just died after finding out he was serious. We are 30 years old. That might not be the case for humans, but Asian elephants do in fact take 18 to 22 months, I believe. Ladies, I'm sure we can both agree 9 months is a long time to carry a small life inside of you, but imagine doing that for goddamn nearly 2 years. Holy crap. I worked in an open kitchen at the time. The boss told us we needed to wash our gloves, disposable latex, because he was having to buy too many. I presume you're working for a crustacean that owns a successful restaurant under the sea? A truck driver complained to me about the government, wasting our money on infrastructure. A pregnant girl at work just sort of put it out there that her baby got its nourishment through her belly button. Like, as in, she believes that somehow her child is getting fed through her own belly button, not the baby is getting nourishment through the umbilical cord and what would become its own belly button. Another girl was walking by us at the time and literally stopped mid-step, shook her head, and then kept walking. Oh man, not nearly as bad, but it reminded me how a few months ago I was out with a friend and I got a very simple math equation wrong when I was working something out, and this old lady stopped, looked at me and went, "You can't be bloody serious." And I turned to her and I said, "You stay out of this, you," because you know when you have those moments where you're just a second behind. You know you're wrong. You know you got something wrong immediately. You're about to correct yourself midway, but no one will let you live it down. Until I was a month shy of 22, I thought the 7 C's were actually the 7 C's, continents. We got our tests back and this kid turns to me and asks, "Does F stand for family?" A piece of my soul died that day. This was 8th grade. There was a dude in my chemistry class who apparently didn't believe in the atomic theory of matter. He claimed no one could see atoms, so there was no reason to believe they existed. The professor just told him that he still had to learn it or he would fail the class. Also, a girl in my circle of friends said evolution was impossible because a few thousand years wasn't enough time for all that. I only realized she was serious when she got really mad at me for laughing at her. I was talking to a coworker about global warming and how eventually polar bears could be extinct. He said, "What's a polar bear?" I said, "What do you mean?" He then said, "Well, a polar bear is nothing but a white-colored bear, so they'll just leave the Arctic and live in the forest." I thought he was joking, but no, he wasn't. I mean, worst case scenario, if all the polar ice caps just completely melted, we're in flooded Earth right now or something like that, and there was some kind of rescue attempt to keep some polar bears alive in captivity or in preservations and stuff like that, and there was legitimately no place with that much ice or snow to put them, then yeah, they probably would dump them in a snowy forest or something like that in Canada, and then they probably eventually evolve and acclimate to that environment over time. So I guess technically he's not wrong in the case of a apocalyptic scenario. I'm not thinking too hard about this though. My sister and I were at my dad's house for his birthday dinner. My sister had brought her kids, my 4-year-old niece and 2-month-old twin boys. My sister was exhausted. tired. She had hardly slept in the last 2 months, and coming to dinner was the first time out of the house in a while. She looked like crap, but was happy to be there with lots of family to take care of the kids for a couple of hours. My step monster, who has never had kids, asks her, "Are you tired?" She replies, yeah, the pregnancy was hard. I had complications from the C-section. They're not good sleepers or eaters. I'm always breastfeeding one of them. It's been a very hard couple of months. I'm always taking care of one of them. Step monster replies, "Oh, that is hard. It sounds like when our dog was a puppy and we were kennel training her. Everyone turned to look at her, mouths agape, including my dad." She wasn't kidding. My sister looks up and says, "Yep, it's exactly like that." I'm not going to say that raising a dog is like raising a baby, but when my dog was a puppy, she was a major handful. Like, I'm telling you, it was so bad at one point that we briefly had the thought of, did we make a mistake on getting this dog? But over time, she got used to us, mellowed out, and she became a sweet little doggy wog. Bit of a diva, though. The spork is the devil's utensil, because it is the amalgamation of the masculine fork and the feminine spoon, and is trying to blur gender lines in society. That is some omega level conservative thinking right there. When I was a new teacher, one of the old timers was venting in the teacher's lounge. She said, "This would be a great job if it wasn't for the kids." I laughed, and she exploded at me, told me I was still too young to hate them. She said I would grow up myself in a few years. That was 26 years ago. Kids are still 100% the best part of the job. I can't imagine anyone staying in education that hates kids. What a sorry life. What a sorry thing to do. How sorry for the kids. My brother told me today that he's pulling out his 401k way early despite the heavy penalties to invest in the stock market. This is because Trump is the best president now, and unlike Obama, he's a businessman, so there's no way he can lose. This is his new retirement plan. I have no frame of reference of what is or isn't a good idea to do when it comes to stock market stuff. You know what? I'm going to go to the library. I'm going to read up on stock stuff and just see what I can learn from it. At work, I got a wet washcloth and squirted some dish soap on it to wash off a table. Coworker freaks out. "Oh my God, you're not going to wash the table with that, are you? People could get sick." "What? Why?" I say as I inspect a clean washcloth. "The soap. People will get the runs from the soap." The soap that's meant for cleaning eating utensils? If they chugged it, sure they would, but this amount will certainly not give anyone the screaming squits. No, I didn't say that. I stared at her completely dumbfounded that she was absolutely serious. My question would be, what has she been cleaning the utensils with this entire time? Not me, but someone I know. So he and his wife and their friends got to go to the Super Bowl last year maybe. They normally watch it live on TV. His wife says in the most serious straight face ever, "Where are the yellow lines that tell the scores and stats and stuff?" I was checking out some cars with a friend at a car dealership that my friend was potentially interested in buying. I was just tagging along, offering my opinion, but wasn't interested in buying one myself. At one point, the car dealership employee who was talking to my friend starts asking me questions like, "Would you be interested in buying a car too? Have you owned a car before?" etc. Long story short, I tell him that I used to own a Renault car when I was living in Europe, but Renault is a company that doesn't sell cars in the US as far as I know. The employee responded by saying that European cars are not available in the US because they don't have seatbelts or airbags. Oh my God, I didn't realize I was riding around in death traps my entire life. I used to work at a popular fast casual soup sandwich restaurant. A woman asked my friend and I if there was cheese in the broccoli and cheddar soup. We laughed in her face. Turns out that's not how you're supposed to handle that situation. Is that a silly question to ask? Yes. Have I also asked silly questions in the past before because I'm absent-minded and a little silly-billy sometimes? Yes. Maybe she was just having a brain fart moment, but still, yeah, it's a silly question. My mom thought that anteaters and sloths are the same animal, just with different names. It is one of those things that as someone who absolutely adores animals and loves animal trivia and whatnot, knows a lot about different animals, not everyone else does. Spanish class in middle school. Kid asks the teacher, "What's the Spanish word for tortilla?" She just looked at him stunned. I think I was in college at the time and in biology class when they went over some human anatomy, particularly the human reproductive system. Now, I learned a lot of the basics back in middle/high school and didn't think much of it when they were talking about the female organs, but the girl next to me was seriously surprised when the professor mentioned that that there was a separate P hole as well as a separate SX hole. I remember she looked at me with the widest eyes and said, "They're different holes? Were you there?" Honestly thought she was messing with me. We were in class and we began talking about the Black Death, the bubonic plague, and I said that the bubonic plague was probably the deadliest disease outbreak in history, seeing as it wiped out a third of humanity. And this super duper level 3 Christian girl asked me how I knew if it happened in the Dark Ages. I said that even though it happened a long time ago, that those cities were able to record what happened. The mortality rates and its effects throughout Europe, no one has ever wondered if the Black Death happened. We know it did. She said, "But you can't really know if it happened or not. I mean, were you there?" She seriously didn't believe that the Black Death ever happened. This female dog said that stupid line all the frickin' time. It was her go-to excuse when she said that the Bible was the oldest written set of laws, and I said that the Code of Hammurabi is well known to predate it and that there were at least 2 other sets of rules created by the Sumerians that predate the Code of Hammurabi. She said that the Code of Hammurabi didn't exist. I googled it and showed her that it was a well-known set of laws that have been written about in length. She said, "But that's just the internet. They can make stuff up easily. Can they prove it? Can you? Were you there?" She used this when it came to a lot of things, especially evolution. Were you there? Just because something doesn't fit your stupid agenda doesn't mean it didn't happen. This sucked because she was honestly one of the most beautiful girls I've ever had the fortune of meeting. I had a friend in the class who was thinking of asking her out, and so was I when we first met her, and when she began to show the crazy, I remember that he and I made eye contact and moved our chairs away from her slightly, enough to show to the others that she was hot but not worth it. My incredibly stupid stepmother, who's 65-ish, said, "How did they know what the dinosaurs were called back then?" in a very serious voice and facial expression while watching a documentary. We were playing a trivia game and a good friend of mine didn't know who Queen Elizabeth was. We told her it's the Queen of England. We tried United Kingdom. She had no idea what we were talking about. Now, if you live in some obscure place with no basic education, sure, but we live in the Netherlands, so it's less than 1 hour away by plane. Someone once told me that pigs are the closest living relative to humans. I started laughing and asked, "What about monkeys and apes?" They replied, "I better Google this, you're laughing really hard." I'm not playing devil's advocate or anything here because I know that's wrong, but they might have gotten that idea because apparently you can replace humans' organs with pig organs? I know there has been a successful transplant with a pig's kidney into a human. I don't want a house someone has already lived in. My sister, while we were talking about her buying a house and why she couldn't get one that was already in an established neighborhood and didn't cost as much since he couldn't really afford a house anyway but insisted on buying one. Was that run-on sentence exhausting to read? Because so was our conversation. I had arrived 20 minutes before the start of my shift at a new job, so I decided to kill time in the break room and read a book. 2 minutes to go. I put the book in my locker and headed down to the sales floor to punch in. My boss sees me and taps his watch. "You're late," he says with his usual smiling eyes. I chuckle in response as if to say, "Right, late. It is precisely 9 a.m. "I'm docking your pay. Don't let it happen again." He fixes me with a stern look to make sure I know he's not joking. I look at the time clock. It says 9:01, a minute faster than my wristwatch. He's effing serious. I made minimum wage back then, so 1 minute literally equaled a few pennies. Yet he indeed took the time to subtract those pennies from my paycheck at the end of the month. When my shift was over at the end of the day, I still had a fair amount of stock on my cart left to shelf, which ordinarily I would have taken care of, but I strode past my boss and punched out, prompting him to say, "You haven't finished your work." Shrugging my shoulders at him, I replied, "Sorry, sir, it's 5:01. I'm late." Pettiness begets pettiness. It is simply the way of the world at this point. A roommate once asked me if London was in England or Europe. I just stared at her for a while before saying both. For about 1 minute, I had to convince a colleague that the reason a computer wouldn't turn on was not that I had fastened a zip tie around the power cords too tight, therefore cutting off the power like a water hose. In this case, it was something I said. Was in an AP psychology class and asked the teacher, "Do deaf people listen to music in Braille?" with a straight face. Teacher just stared and the class burst out laughing. I learned later on most of them thought I was just kidding because that's what I usually do. Except I was dead serious. It was me that said it. New relationship with a super nice lady. Romantic weekend getaway. She suggests an afternoon float down a nearby river in a canoe. I know from experience, canoeing is a serious test of relationship potential. My ex-wife and I couldn't even carry a canoe from the beach to the bay without getting into an argument. Anyhow, new relationship, super nice lady. I'm determined to be a great team player and competent man. I have plenty of experience on the water. This should be a cinch. Canoe livery guy drives us to the drop-off while he is taking the canoe off the trailer and telling us how long the float is and where the pickup point is. I'm looking at the river, the wide, slow-moving river, the extremely slow-moving river. Along with the fact that it is a blustery, windy day, I can't for the life of me tell which way the river flows. Some leaves are floating left, some leaves are floating right. I toss in a stick and it just floats around in a circle. I'm starting to sweat. I figure I have a 50-50 chance of guessing correctly, but if I guess wrong, it could end in a disaster. Having to ask is a total embarrassment. I'm hoping the livery guy makes some reference to direction, but no. I'm desperately hoping to see someone else float by, but no. I picture us paddling upstream for 2 hours and being lost on the river. Livery guy hands us our paddles and says, "So if there's nothing else, I'll see you in a couple hours. Have fun." I bite the bullet and decide that asking is the best way forward. Yeah, which way is downstream? Livery guy and super nice lady both laugh, thinking I'm joking. No, I'm serious. Livery guy stops laughing and just points. I'm sure he was thinking that was the most stupid thing he had ever heard. We paddled downriver a bit, and super nice lady says, "Boy, am I glad you asked. I thought downstream was the other way." Anxiety from asking something stupid is a totally real thing, but as I've gotten older, you just gotta bite the bullet and accept that it's better to be safe than sorry. A girl I dated some time ago used to think that pouring alcohol on a fire would put it out because her parents told her. Her parents also told her letting your phone battery die was good for it. Nickel-based batteries, yes, but I believe most batteries nowadays are made from lithium. I was talking about environmental issues with a girl I used to work with, and she wondered why everything wasn't powered by electricity. She pointed to a lamp plugged into a nearby wall. "Look, no pollution. None." She said, "People don't get this, and it's so simple." When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Linked in the description below.